Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that from?
From Funko.
Really? I haven't seen that one before. I didn't know they had one that talked.
Why is there an echo?
Not sure. Hold on.
Do you have more than one device on?
No. Nope. This is the only one. I'm not using my That's one thing that maybe I don't have my microphone plugged in. I'm just using the computer mic. But yeah. So anyway,
Gotta figure out where this echo is coming from. This is maddening. Ah, I think I figured it out. There we go. So what's up, man?
not much. Not much. Just chilling. As you know, 2 weeks ago I was in Houston for our Final Four appearance, which was phenomenal. It was a great, great time. We came up
What's
a
up,
little bit
Brian?
short. We came up a little bit short against the eventual champions, but
Derek?
yeah, it was had a really good time.
Well, I mean, yeah, we made it to the Final Four for the first time in Miami history. Shout out to the U
Yeah,
for men's and women's basketball, making it to the Elite Eight.
yep. And what's crazy is the women played in Dallas, and of course the men's Final Four was in Houston. So if our women had made it to the Final Four, I would have been shuttling between Dallas and Houston all weekend to see history. I don't care how much it would have cost. I would have made that sacrifice to see us play. So
That would have been worth the trip.
yeah. Yep.
All right, man. So we got comics to go into and some other
First off,
things.
whiskey. Start with the whiskey.
Let's start off with the whiskey. I have with for me tonight a gift from my wife from our anniversary, which we just had a week and a half ago. It is Glenfiddich VAT 3 15-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey. Now, allegedly, this whiskey, it's not a peated whiskey. Glenfiddich refers to the plains area by the springs. Excuse me for a second. I'm about to sneeze. Oh, jeez. Anyway, it's supposed to have a bit of a sherry taste to it, some nuttiness as well. So I'm going to open this up for the first time.
One of the things that I've found is that I like scotch or any whiskey, but mainly scotch that has been finished in a sherry cask. Glenmorangie La Santa is one that is finished in a sherry cask, and
That's an excellent one.
yeah, it typically has a sweeter taste to it that I absolutely enjoy. So if you're out there listening and you want a pretty good sip, get Glenmorangie La Santa. It's in a maroon box.
Maroon and gold.
Yeah, LASANTA, La Santa.
Pull out my glass with my crown at the bottom because this is the Wakanda Whiskey and BLERDDOM show. The crown for the king, T'Challa. May he rest in peace. Because he is, for all intents and purposes, dead in the Marvel Universe. Both
Well,
in comics and in film.
so wait, hold. Well,
What?
do you have ice in there?
Yes, I have an ice ball.
Right, because I was going to suggest that you taste it first without the ice to get the full flavor of it without the ice first on your first pour.
You know what? You're absolutely correct. Do I have any other glasses around here? I do not. Oh, here we go. Well, I've got a cup. It's kind of ghetto. Don't judge me.
Probably has a cereal bowl.
No, it's a New York Miami cup. Ooh, fruity.
Did you pull up the pictures of the drinks? Did you the one that I sent you?
I did not.
All right, that's fine. All right. Well,
But
he sent it.
gosh darn, that is smooth. When I
Well,
say
he's
smooth, it is smooth.
Well, he's sipping on that. This is what I have. Is I don't know if you can see it. Redwood Empire, and somebody from Twitter actually suggested this to me. There we go. Redwood Empire. It's a whiskey out of California, of all places. I had never heard about it until this dude I follow on Twitter.
Specifically, that's Sonoma, California, right?
Yeah,
Wine
I believe so. Mm, this smells. This smells good. Very floral notes. Let's see here. It's my first time opening it. I just bought it the other day.
You're right. I should not have put ice on this. This is ridiculously smooth. It does not need ice. In fact, I would say I destroyed it with ice.
Let's
This is
see here.
definitely a whiskey you want to drink neat.
Okay, this isn't bad. This actually kind of reminds me of the Wolf Moon that I constantly tell you about.
The one that you didn't send me for Christmas when I asked
Hmm.
for it?
That's the one.
Son of a bitch.
What did you ever buy you a cocktail smoker?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm gonna start using it whenever we do these shows, and this is okay the way it is right now. Um, I can't say that I would, if I was out in public or at a restaurant or whatever, that I would necessarily order this. It's not bad. It would probably be good in an old fashioned or a Manhattan. I'm a smoke it right now though, just to see what that does to it. I've got my smoker, and this time I've got applewood chips in here.
Applewood should be nice.
Yep.
You got to show the screen what you're doing.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Particularly if you burn yourself. I got to get that on video.
Yeah, no, right? Oops. Where's the camera? There we go. So it's getting infused with that applewood smoke. Right there. So I'm going to let this infuse for a second and pop that off and see what that tastes like. So anyway, what books are we going to talk about?
What's up, Philly Born? He says he needs a cigar right now.
You know, I was thinking about that, but I don't smoke inside. But I was definitely
my wife
thinking
would
about
kill
getting
me.
one.
Besides which, I'm in my comic book room. The last thing I'd ever want to do is have any smoke in here.
Plus, your wife would kill you if you smoked inside anyway.
More importantly, my wife would kill me.
Yeah. So what comic?
Yeah, I need to dump this ice. This is way too good for ice. Let's work something out here. Let's drink some water.
So for those watching and listening, when you're trying a whiskey for the very, very first time,
Yeah, I made a rookie mistake.
don't put ice on it. You want to taste what it's like in its natural incarnation. You know, you want to get those notes from it as it is pure. Then if you want to go ahead and, you know, throw a couple of drops of water in it or put it over ice, fine. But, you know, always try it out first without ice.
Now the good thing is I have chilled my glass now, so
Yeah, that's what I did too. But
got it at
wait
an
for a
appropriate
minute.
temperature. But this is ridiculous. 15-year-old Scott. This is smooth
Here's one. Look at
and
that.
slightly buttery, oddly enough. Marzipan.
Marzipan.
Yeah. This is smooth like butter.
Okay, I may try that out. Earlier today, I found out for the whiskey drinkers out there, there's an event that I've mentioned before called Whiskeys of the World, and they've released their 2023 tour dates, and it's coming here to Atlanta in October. If you just Google the website Whiskeys of the World, it may be coming to your area. I know there's one in DC. I know there's one. I think it's in San Francisco. There's one here in Atlanta, and then there's one in South Florida. But it's always a fun event. You know, the thing with whiskey is you go out to a restaurant, you're gonna pay between $13 and $60 a pour for a whiskey, and you may not know what you like. You know what I'm saying? If you've never had it before, you don't want to sit up here and waste your money on something that you don't know if you're gonna like. That's why I like these events like Whiskeys of the World that's coming up in October, Beer, Bourbon, and Barbecue that was here in Atlanta last month, where you pay one entry fee, you pay one price, and then you get to try a bunch of different whiskeys so you can learn, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So when you go to your liquor store, you go out to have yourself a nice steak, hey, let me get me, a glass of Wolf Moon or Avalor, whatever the case may be, Balvenie, whatever it is. So I would highly encourage folks to go to those type of events if you are into whiskey or want to get into whiskey. So,
Well, we're going to talk about some comics, ladies and gentlemen. Whew, this stuff's good, man. I might be faded by the end of the night. This is.
I don't
Let's talk.
like this applewood smoke on this one. So for mine, I'm gonna go ahead and drop a ice block in there. Let that change the flavor a little bit and see what I think about it.
Let's see. How do I add this to add the stream? There we go. First book up tonight, Philadelphia 29.
I love Philadelphia. This issue left a lot to be desired because really didn't much happen in it. Jason Sean Alexander's art, of course, was on point.
Always on point.
Always on point. And it was basically reading this book. It was like a scroll through history because Jason recreated a bunch of historical photographs and actual events that happened here in the real world as part of Rodney's storytelling. Obviously we love the series, but just this one issue, I do not feel did anything. Um, it was like a filler. Like if you watch anime, a lot of anime like Naruto or Dragon Ball Z or One Piece, they'll have so many episodes that sometimes they have what's known as filler episodes where nothing really happens to drive the story forward. And I kind of feel like this issue was a filler issue. There was nothing really pertinent in here that to me drove the story forward other than maybe the last couple of pages. Not saying it's bad, of course. It's just it left a little bit to be desired for myself.
I will slightly disagree with that. The last several issues has really been a culmination of this entire story arc. All the players were introduced in the first story arc. In the second story arc, it was more about giving you background as to the world building that was going on, showing the internal forces between not just darkness and light, but the living, the undead. Sort of the third volume was the developing the war between the various factions. This is in essence an epilogue, the ending, almost a prelude to what I would suspect is the final issue of this storyline in the next issue, issue 30. As Mark said, the last couple pages is really kind of the highlight of this particular issue. Something significant happens to a major character. But yeah, I mean, the story wise, much of this was pretty much an epilogue on that character's life, a retrospective, culminating in a major event for the character at the end. I think this was just an extended build up to what I think is going to be a pretty dope 30th issue, which is the next issue and the final issue for this storyline.
I hate the fact that we don't get a lot of content. Paul and I have talked over the years how back in the 80s and 90s, you spent 60, 70 cents on a book and got 30, 40 pages, including advertisements or whatever, but you had a good bit of story in those 60, 70-cent books. Nowadays, you're spending $3.99, $4.99 on a book, and there's really not much story that's in them a lot of times. I just wish coming up on this 30th issue that there's a lot of content in it. But I know based on how the comic industry is nowadays, we're not going to get that. But if this is the culmination, or that is the culmination of the overall story of Volume One, I just wish we'd have a lot of meat in it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the OG perspective on comics in general, which I don't disagree with. Comics back in the day, page length were a little bit longer. I think most comics today average about 22 pages. Back in the day, they were about 26 pages, so about 4 pages more. Moreover, it wasn't really until you got to about the 90s where you had splash pages, because in the 90s, that's when you had the hot artists, the Todd McFarlanes, the Eric Larsons, the Rob Liefeld, the Jim Lees, and they got into doing these big splash pages, which took up the entire page or most of the page. But the comic companies loved it because it made for having to do less work, really, because you're doing less story work. So that's what we've gotten nowadays is we have these huge splash pages which take up a lot of page length, and reduces the amount of story, because back in the day the panels were a lot smaller and you'd actually get a lot more dialogue and story in each issue as a result, in addition to the additional 4 pages. So it made the story seem much, much longer reading those older comics.
I mean, it would, reading an older comic took minutes, like a while to get through everything. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, you can read, one of the newer comics, modern comics, in like 5 minutes because there's so little there the way they do things now. And since we're talking about splash pages and things of that nature, one of the best books I've ever read that doesn't have not one sentence of dialogue was
G.I. Joe 21.
No, Ultimate X-Men 41, I want to say. That's the one. Now, this is going to be a spoiler because, the book is like 20 years old at this point. But in the book, a mutant developed his powers overnight where his body secreted some type of enzyme that basically made organic life disintegrate. And he didn't know what was going on.
Are you talking about dude from Ecstatics, the brother?
No, it was a white kid.
Oh.
It was a white kid. While I'm talking, if you can pull up Ultimate X-Men 41.
I cannot do that right now.
Okay, sure. But and in the book, they being Nick Fury and Shield, sent Wolverine after this kid because there would have been no way to for him to control his powers. And they sent Wolverine because he's got the healing factor and it wouldn't affect him the way it would other people. From beginning to end, the storyline with the art and I can't think of who the artist is. I'll tell you here in a minute. But it was just powerful. There was a way that you could convey a story without one sentence of dialogue. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was Ultimate X-Men 41, and it was illustrated by David Finch. And this is it. I don't know if you can see it, but this is one of the best comic books I've ever read. And as I said, it doesn't have one sentence of dialogue in it. It was
I wouldn't say about not one sentence. It had some.
It has. There was no dialogue in that book at all.
There was.
Where? I'll be more than happy to go get my copy. There was no dialogue in that book, Paul. Not one sentence that I recall.
Here's a sentence.
Okay.
We built this city.
That's a song. The kid. Okay.
What's he saying right here?
You're right. There he is right there. He's talking.
Say those 2 words again.
He was talking. You're absolutely correct.
All right.
On two whole panels. You're absolutely right.
It was more than that, but you are correct. There is not much dialogue in this. It is not a lot of exposition. It is mostly a story of pictures.
Yep. Love that book. Absolutely love it. And I love David Finch's art. I think he's one of my favorites out there.
Yeah. Next book up, another Rodney Barnes book, Monarch number, I think this is 3. Um, Not a lot happened in this issue, just like how you said in Philadelphia 29. In this particular issue, we're still developing this world because this is only the 3rd issue. So we're still figuring out who the players are and what's going on. We had a major revelation in the last issue. This issue had more to do with this little girl who's on the front, who's a friend of the main character, and establishing her motivations and her relationship with the main character. But beyond that, there wasn't really much more development as to, because I don't want to give any spoilers, but much more development on the main character or what's going on with him. So this was more of a character development issue of this particular female character that you see on the cover here. Next issue.
Hold on, go back. Is that a dystopian world?
For all intents and purposes, yes. Yes, it is.
Now, I don't read that, but, just off rip, that reminds me of Eve. You got a solitary Black female on the cover. Just, again, having not even read this book, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, this is much more of a post-Independence Day book. Aliens, I mean, it's not much of a spoiler. Aliens invade the world, and it's a cross between Aliens. I didn't mean to say Aliens. I meant Independence Day, and Logan's Run. No, not Logan's Run. What's the one I'm trying? Lord of the Flies. More like Independence Day meets Lord of the Flies. That's what the storyline is. Robert Monroe Jr. says he's picking up Monarch 3 this week. I'll pick up anything Rodney Barnes writes. The man's a genius. He doesn't sleep. I'm pretty sure he's a vampire. He cranks out more quality books than any of the artists on the stands today. Period. Dot. Keith White, good evening, fellows. Good to be amongst the fellow blurs. Yes, sir. Welcome. Next issue. Miles Morales, Spider-Man. This is issue number 4. What issue we're up to now? Latest issue. If you're reading this title, you know that Miles has been in a little bit of trouble. The villain in this character in this book, Rabble, knows his secret identity and has an axe to grind with him. Based on, in essence, both of their origins, which have a tie. This is the sort of final issue of this particular storyline, I believe. What was cool is you actually see Miles develop a new power set that you have not seen him do before. Shout out to Cody Ziegler. I'm enjoying his writing on Miles Morales. He's got this cool sub-story where Miles is partnered with Misty Knight. I say partnered. He is literally her intern. She is teaching him the ropes of how to be a superhero. Miles has been around for 10 years as a character, over 10 years as a character. And he's had people that have said, hey, I'll teach you a couple things here and there along the way where it suited a storyline. But this is the first time he's formally been taken under somebody's wing to learn how to be a superhero in 10 years. Cody picked up on that, and shout out to him for having him learn from Marvel's first original superheroine, Misty Knight, who has a very long history herself and is a legendary figure who, quite frankly, deserves a lot more than what she gets. But their relationship is really cool. And you see a lot of the development of that relationship in this issue, which I thought was pretty dope. I'm enjoying Cody Ziegler's writing. I'm enjoying Miles Morales again. I was falling out of love with Miles Morales towards the end of the last run because it just wasn't really doing it for me. There's a new fresh take on the character that I'm enjoying. So really enjoying Cody Ziegler's run on Miles Morales.
Are you gonna go see Into the Spider Verse in the theater? Did you see the first one in the theater when it first came out, or did you
I
like
did.
watch it
I
on
loved it.
streaming or what?
I honestly think Into the Spider Verse is one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. It's literally for me top three, top four at worst.
See, a lot of people
Spider-Man.
say that, and it just didn't do it for me to that extent. Maybe because I watched it like 2 or 3 weeks after it dropped, and I heard all this hype surrounding it. So when I finally saw it, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it was cool. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't do that for me. But when two drops, are you gonna go watch it that first weekend or?
Yeah, I'll probably try and watch it that first week. I really am a big fan of that first movie. I really thought it was dope, and the second one looks crazy dope. I mean, it's having introducing that entire Spider Verse is kind of cool. One of the cool features of the CLZ app, which Marc finally got onto after 20 years of me hounding him to do so. One of the features it has is a stats feature, and you can list um, the character, the number one character, the character that appears the most in the comic books that you own. And for someone like myself or Marc, who has, for all intents and purposes, a very extensive comic book collection that can be fairly prolific, the number one character that pops up in my comic books is Spider-Man.
Really?
Yep. I have more comics with Spider-Man than any other character.
And you're not just talking about Miles Morales, you're just talking about Spider-Man overall.
Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Peter Parker. Although I've been collecting Miles from the very beginning. I got Ultimate Fallout number 4 because I was collecting Ultimate Comics, so it wasn't
Right.
a big deal for me. But yeah, Spider-Man is. I've always been a big Spider-Man fan since I was a kid, and for me, I don't collect the main Spider-Man title anymore. I collect Miles Morales because I think he's honestly a superior Spider-Man for a number of reasons. Next up,
Hold on a second. Hold on. But going back to
yeah,
what you were just saying, for me, I'm looking at mine, who I have the most of. Number one is Captain America, Steve Rogers. Number two is Iron Man, Tony Stark. And number three is Peter Parker, Spider Man.
yeah, I think 1 for me is Spider-Man. 2 is Iron Man, maybe. No, 2 is Batman. 3 is Iron Man. 4 is probably Captain America. And then I think 5 is Black Panther.
I honestly,
That's only because, and I own most of Black Panther's appearances in books and stuff. So that's really just a matter of Black Panther just doesn't show up in as many books.
right. And that's what I was getting ready to say on my list. Black Panther T'Challa comes in at number 12 behind Nightcrawler, of all people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm surprised that Thor is like 14, 15 on my list, considering my extensive Thor collection, plus his appearances in the Avengers. So that's just pretty interesting how that shakes out like that.
Hey, shout out to Sean Damian Hill, artist extraordinaire. What's up,
Going
brother?
on.
How you doing? You did an interview recently, Sean, with Pens to Paper or something. I haven't caught it yet, but I'm gonna try and check it out. Wait a second. Did Sean do this? Did you do this cover? Sean, is that why you're saying that? I didn't even check to see who did this cover. Oh, damn, I gotta look that up. Anyway, while I'm doing that, next issue, Captain America: Cold War. Why don't you take this one, War?
This is a good book. Basically, in Captain America, there are two in Marvel 616, there are two Captains America. There is, of course, the OG Steve Rogers and the new quote unquote Captain America Sam Wilson. each one of them had their own title that lasted about maybe 8 to 12 issues. And whatever storyline was going on in Steve Rogers' book, I honestly can't say because I wasn't collecting that one, but I was collecting Sam's book. And so now you've got their stories combined in this book called Cold War. And your main nemesis is, of all people, Bucky Barnes, Steve Rogers' original partner. And it was the first issue is actually pretty good. Um, I don't know what all, as I said a moment ago, I don't know what all was going on in Steve's book, but what was going on in Sam's book was Sam was dealing with Wakanda. At a certain point in time, Wakanda had opened up its borders to Black folks here in America to immigrate back to the motherland, so to speak. Sam, as an agent of the United States government, basically invaded Wakanda, and Wakanda was like, you know what? As the symbol of America and what you did, we don't want Americans here anymore. So he basically messed up the immigration for all American Black folks going there. But he was fighting in his book somebody who has strong ties to Wakanda. And then that villain is now going to be one of the two main villains, along with Bucky Barnes, in the Cold War saga. They've created their own cabal of individuals. I can't remember the name of the group, but they've created their own cabal. And so now Sam and Steve are going to have to fight them. What I also didn't know is that Steve Rogers has a kid. I
You
don't know
didn't know
how
Steve
that
Rogers
happened.
had a kid?
Yeah, yeah.
So the Steve Rogers kid thing.
Is he a clone or something? I don't. I haven't.
No, he's actually, well, kind of. He's the son of Baron Zemo. So Steve Rogers, God, this is complicated. The short story is this: Steve Rogers at one point got quote unquote assassinated. This, I don't really like talking about this because the story was stupid and didn't make any sense. But he was quote unquote assassinated, which led to Bucky Barnes taking over the mantle of Captain America. Steve Rogers apparently wasn't assassinated by Agent Carter, Sharon Carter, Agent 13. She was actually brainwashed and taken over by the Red Skull's cronies. I forget the guy's name, Dr.
Faustus, Dr. Faustus.
Faustus brainwashed her, and they gave her a gun which ripped through time and space and transported him to another dimension.
Batman did something like that. Batman had an issue.
Yeah, it's just like it's stupid. It's when they put themselves in a box and they have to come out with a way to fix killing off a character. They come up with these crazy, insane, bend over backwards 3 times type of explanations that don't make any sense. So, long story short, Captain America is transported to the dimension Z, and Sharon Carter is much older. I mean, she's I guess transported there to find him or whatever. They link up. They find Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo has a boy, but he's not evil. So the two of them basically adopt him and raise him for like 20 years. And in that dimension. So they both get old, but the boy ages, and Captain America eventually comes back to our dimension, but he's young again. Sharon Carter also comes back, but now she's older. She's now 20 years older, which is why Sharon Carter, for a long period of time afterwards, was much older than Steve Rogers. The boy, Ian, came back, and when Sam Wilson became Captain America on a run by Nick Spencer, which was very good, although I'm not a fan of Sam Wilson becoming Captain America, that storyline was excellent because it really addressed the questions that you kind of sort of touched upon a little bit in the Falcon Winter Soldier television series. How would America react to a Black Captain America? They addressed that in that run, and it's very well written and profound. And I hope the next Captain America movie sort of deals with the themes and stories that they talked about there.
Probably won't.
But Sam Wilson partners with Ian. Ian becomes Nomad. Nomad is the alias or superhero name that Steve Rogers took when he was forced out of the mantle of Captain America. He took on the mantle of Nomad, and just he didn't have any weapons or anything like that. He just had a cape and a bare chest like a
Well, he had
1970s black superheroes.
those discs on his uniform. I
He
think he
had disc
like,
on his uniform that he
yeah,
could throw and like frisbees and hit you
yeah.
with. That was pretty much it. It was. That's why I said I don't like talking about this because the whole thing's stupid. So Ian becomes Nomad. He becomes Sam Wilson's partner prior to Sam Wilson's current partner, which is the new Falcon. So that explains that. What did I think of Cold War? If you were reading Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty, and Symbol of Truth, which are the two companion, simultaneous, side by side Captain America stories that were going on in their respective books of Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson, you would enjoy this book because it's a culmination of that book. I really just sort of stuck to reading the Sam Wilson book, The Symbol of Truth. There are a few issues of the Sentinel of Liberty that was interesting because it did some background explaining that there's another secret organization kind of running things behind the scenes, kind of like an Illuminati called the Circle, who in many ways are somewhat responsible for the creation of Steve Rogers and certainly more specifically his shield, which I don't remember if they finally explained the full origin, but I know Captain America, Steve Rogers' shield was developed by an African guy. It doesn't specify that he's Wakandan, but they didn't say he wasn't Wakandan, but it would stand to reason, given that
Considering
it's
vibranium.
obviously made out of vibranium. But it was there was for many years it was presumed that this white scientist created the shield. He only basically he kind of what's the name of the guy who invented the light bulb allegedly?
Oh, Edison.
Edison, Thomas Edison. He kind of Thomas Edison his way to fame by saying, I invented Captain America's shield when it was actually the black dude in the background who made it. That's what happened here with Captain America's shield. So I read it to the extent of knowing that. The Sam Wilson storyline centered around the White Wolf and his machinations to take over a country that is bordering to Wakanda, kind of very much a South Africa-like country called Mahanda. And, the thing with the White Wolf, it's not necessarily that he is stronger or faster or has more, strength than with T'Challa. He's just cunning like T'Challa. And he's plans within plans. In many ways, he's kind of like the evil version of T'Challa in that respect. It's kind of like T'Challa was brilliant as a brilliant tactician, because that's who he was raised to be by T'Chaka, his father. Well, White Wolf has the same father. In fact, he's older than T'Challa. So he's had more time to have that training with T'Chaka. So he's in essence a shadowy reflection of who T'Challa would be if T'Challa decided to go bad. If you had this type of brilliant tactical mind who you've been trained since birth to think 5 steps ahead and have plans within plans within plans, what would an evil version of that be? That's White Wolf.
And here's the main difference, though, is that White Wolf knew that he wasn't going to grow up to be king. Yeah. So his issue is he's selfish. He's about self.
He's Scar from the Lion King.
T'Challa has grown up to think about Wakanda. Everything that T'Challa does is formulated from the position of what can I do to protect my people? And that's what made one of the biggest things about the whole John Ridley run, and this will be the last time I talk about it, which made it so very bad, is that T'Challa was being punished, quote unquote, in the Ridley run for doing stuff that was for the benefit of the nation. So that's the main difference between the White Wolf and T'Challa. Both very cunning, both very intelligent individuals, but White Wolf is coming from a position of what can I do that's going to benefit me, whereas T'Challa was like, okay, what can I do that can protect and benefit Wakandans? That's the major difference between the two of them.
Yeah. All right.
But
We'll
but
move on
going
to.
back to this book, Cold War, I enjoyed it. I didn't know that Bucky could now change. He kind of reminds me, it was the T-1000 or whatever from uh God,
Terminator.
Terminator. Like Bucky can now, I guess, transmute his arm. That's something that I'd never seen before. I wasn't really expecting that, but I'm looking forward to how this story ends. And I like the fact, that this book, you've got Sam Wilson, who is with Misty Knight. And for those who are maybe too young to remember, Misty Knight, aka Iron Fist, but now she's with Sam, and I like that aspect. Even though they're both basically humans, that's something that's missing in comics that we always talk about, is the lack of black love. That's
Black
what
Super Love.
that's one of the main reasons why I push so hard for T'Challa to be recast in the MCU, so we can eventually see him end up with Storm. That's another criticism of the Ridley run, that he, just put a whole big kibosh on the relationship between Aurora and T'Challa, even though Coates put them back together organically. So, but with Misty and Sam, you've got the burgeoning of black love, but neither one of them are super. They're both just highly skilled, highly trained agents. Neither one of them have powers or ability. Well, Sam can talk to birds. I don't know how that came about or whatever. I think the Red Skull gave him that power, but other than that, they're not super beings. So their children will not be, if they ever had any, would not be on the level of Valeria or Franklin Richards as super mutants or whatever the case may be. But the fact that you've got two popular heroes together, I do like that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I like them as a couple. It works, you know. Both of them from Harlem. Both of them have storied histories, legacy characters. Um, from the very beginning of the Marvel universe, or I should say, the Bronze Age and the Silver Age. Um, they work as a couple. I like to see them together. I'm glad they got brought back together at the end of the run. I like to see them partnered up together. Um, I think the only thing I didn't like about the Captain America Symbol of Truth run was, and I mentioned this before, is that fight he had with Black Panther just didn't make any sense. It's just, you don't beat Black Panther in his full suit while just wearing sneakers and jeans
And the jersey, yeah,
and a football jersey.
yeah.
That's just not going to happen.
But the thing about that issue that I did like was the way that they had T'Challa acting and speaking was how we've come to know T'Challa to be.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know what the hell Ridley was on,
yeah.
but
We're
that's
not
not
talking
the
about that.
T'Challa I know.
We're
The
not
way
talking
that
about that guy.
he was in that issue, that's the T'Challa that we've known and loved. But all that being said, personally, I do like Captain America: Cold War.
There is still an outstanding warrant for the arrest of the outlaw American writer John Ridley. Wakanda will find you someday, sir, and we will bring you to justice for
What's the
besmirching my good name to all of the people of Marvel Comics and to the world. We will get you, and we will bring you to justice, sir.
what's the next
T'Challa has
book?
spoken. Next book, Storm
Yeah.
and the Brotherhood of the Mutants.
All right, so check it. In the X titles, right here, in the X titles, Mr. Sinister, who is over 100 years old, who is a basically geneticist, has infected the Quiet Council, or those who were ruling Araco. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. Who were ruling Araco, the mutant nation. He infected them with some of his DNA. so that he could kind of take over the Quiet Council and rule things. Well, things went awry. And so the whole thing is called the Sins of Sinister, and it's a cross issue X title storyline where basically mutants have taken over not over planet Earth, but the entire galaxy. I am absolutely loving this storyline. I love this storyline. I would highly get, if
Really?
you are an X-Men fan, get the Sins of Sinister book, and at the top left, it'll tell it'll tell you right here what chapter in the storyline the books are, and it crosses several different books. There's Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants, which is part of the Sins of Sinister. I think Nightcrawler has a book, and a couple of more. But this is very good. And in this issue, issue number 2, this was Storm in her full glory and full power. It was
When we say full power, let's talk about that. So, something that has been talked about more and more these days is the fact that Storm has a mystical background. Um, there are several issues that talk about this. I can't really get to them all right now because I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But one of them involved a limited series with Storm and Magic, Ilyana Rasputin. I think it was literally called Miss Magic and Storm limited series, in which it's revealed that Storm has ancient ancestors. There's two particular ones that are mentioned, Ashake and I can't remember the other one's name off the top of my head. I apologize, but suffice it to say, Storm comes from a long line of sorcerers. In fact, it is believed that the very first Sorcerer Supreme, like Doctor Strange, the very first one was one of Storm's ancestors. So Storm has a very long history, comes from a very long lineage of sorceresses. If you look at the issue before last of the Scarlet Witch series that's presently going on, the Scarlet Witch also makes note of this, that the way Storm views energy and uses energy, it's more than just a mutant ability. She has the ability to perceive mystical energy and manipulate it. And we'll probably do a show about this at some point. The fact that, all these ties that Storm has, the mystical energy, just guys remind me and I'll put that together for you. But in short, in this issue, which takes place in the future, as you see on the cover to the right, she's older. So this is like 100 years in the future. Storm combines both her Omega level power with her mystical power as enhanced by Cora of the Burning Heart, who has the ability to enhance mutant powers to the upper limits. Now, Storm's an Omega level mutant, which means technically she doesn't really have any upper limits. So Cora boosted that.
like
And then,
Fabian Cortez, like Fabian Cortez.
like Fabian Cortez. And then Storm also tapped into mystical energy as well. So she's wielding power unprecedented, ever seen in a comic book in that particular issue. Storm and Brotherhood issues, Brotherhood of Mutants #2. Never has she ever demonstrated that level of ability. And it's what she does with it is cosmic level power.
Let me interject this. One of the reasons, okay, so who was the dude who wrote Powers of X, House of X?
Who what the what?
Who
Who
was the
wrote it?
dude who wrote Power of X and House of X?
Jonathan Hickman.
Hickman has created a storyline and a world that is top notch, beyond anything that we've ever seen, and especially in the X titles. So basically, the X-Men have their own country, which is an island, which was Krakoa, however you pronounce it.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to recognize Sean Damian Hill says it's crazy how much she looks like Bishop's grandmother from the Larry Stroman miniseries. Sean is being slightly coy with you folks because he's the artist on the current Bishop comic book that's out there. And if you look at the cover or the storyline where Bishop sees a planet of black X-Men, that's an allusion to a Bishop miniseries in which Bishop as a child was told stories by his grandmother who looked exactly like that woman you see on the cover of issue 2 of Storm and the Brotherhood of Mutants on the right there. She looked exactly like that woman. And so it was kind of an illusion that Bishop's grandmother was actually Storm because she told him stories about the X-Men. So here he is, a kid in Australia, listening to his grandmother, who looks like Storm, telling him about the X-Men, and everyone around him is Aborigine black people. So he naturally, as a child would visualize the X-Men as the people that he's familiar with. So his visualization of his grandmother's stories had all of the X-Men looking like black people or Aborigine people. And that, when that cover came out, which showed the black X-Men on the cover that Sean's working on right now, I immediately put 2 and 2 together and said, I think this is what they're kind of alluding to, is that Bishop maybe having a flashback or something, or his mind is working in that way where he's thinking about his childhood and interpretation of what the X-Men are. So Sean, don't think I didn't pick up on that. You're trying to be slick? I see you, dude. I see you. Mark, go on. Sorry.
So basically, like I said, Hickman created this world where the
Mario's asking you about Hickman's Ultimate Invasion, by the way.
Okay. They have their own country, which is Krakoa. It's an island. And as part of their creating this country, they've created reincarnation where basically if an X-Man dies or a mutant dies as part of a mission or whatever, they can clone that person and reinsert their personality, their memories up to their save point so they can just be basically immortal to a certain degree. Well, Sinister, as part of this group, was part of the leading council. There's probably like 7 or 8 mutants, probably about 8 or 12 mutants who were ruling the country of Krakoa. Whenever somebody was reincarnated, Sinister, especially the Quiet Council, who were, for all intents and purposes, the Congress and the rulers of the country, he would insert some of his DNA into them so that they would do what Sinister said. Storm, however, was like, look, if I die, I don't want to go through this process. I don't want to be reincarnated. So because she never went through that process, she was never infected with the Sinister gene. That's why she's ancient in issue number 2, the way that she is. And she wasn't infected, and she's fighting with her crew against the Diamond Heads. Okay. So that's the story, and that's what's going on. And she lived a very, very long life. She lived well into her 100s without even being resurrected. I think she was resurrected once early on, but after that, she was like, okay, yeah, no, I don't want to be resurrected again. Other members of the Quiet Council, like Hope, Professor X, especially during the Axe storyline, and the Axe storyline was Avengers X-Men Eternal storyline. Many members of the Quiet Council were killed either through the actions of the Eternals or Sinister himself attacking them. Nobody knew other than Destiny knew exactly what was going on because he was trying to get them to die so he can insert his DNA in them and basically take over the world. Well, he inserted them, and his experiment took off to extremes that he wasn't even expecting. And so, as I said, they not only took over planet Earth, but they took over the entire galaxy. And Storm, being who and how she is fighting against her old friends because she was not infected with the sinister gene. It is a very, very good storyline. You have to start with House of X, Power of X to see how and why everything is going on. Then you have to pick up the Axe storyline, which is Avengers, X-Men, Eternals, which leads you into what we have now, which is the Sins of Sinister. Very, very good storyline. Hickman is one of the best writers out there.
Congratulations, C. Cole. All right, so next book. Mosley, number 3. I don't know. I don't think a whole lot happened in this issue.
No, it didn't.
Not a whole lot happened. For those of you who don't know, it's a dystopian future where
machines take over.
Yeah, I mean, people become lazy. They
It's
allow.
amazing.
It's like the end of the movie WALL-E.
Yep, it's a
Where
Wally
machines-
Matrix combination.
Yeah, machines kind of take all the task of man daily's task, and there are people that object to that. They're call them revolutionaries or protesters or however you want to phrase it. There are people that are against the current state of the world, the anti-tech people. Mosley is a former soldier turned janitor who tried to fight against the technologization of the world and failed. So he became a janitor. His daughter is very much involved and ingrained. She's brilliant, but she's very much involved and ingrained in this technological world and sort of the betterment of man through technology. Mosley has been granted the power by this entity to fight against this technology with a magic, what is it, a hammer? Or
Basically,
axe?
Thor's hammer. Yeah.
And so he is fighting the good fight against technology with this magic weapon. Not a whole lot developed in this issue. Maybe some backstory between Mosley and his ex-wife, his daughter's mother.
Yeah. And once again, you've got another interracial couple. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just interesting how you find so little Black love in comic books. What's up, Chad? After issue number 1, I was not impressed, and I wasn't going to pick it up. Somebody who I follow on Twitter, I can't remember who at this point, had picked up issue 2 and was hailing its attributes. So I went on ahead and picked it up. I really liked issue 2. Issue 2 has been, thus far of the 3 issues, the best one.
Yeah. 3 wasn't bad. It just didn't move the needle much.
Right. Issue 3 was okay. As a series overall, it's okay. I wouldn't say it was great the way that I would say, for example, the Sins of Sinister. Sins of Sinister is great. Mosley is okay. The protagonist is a brother. That's the reason why I'm picking it up. That's the reason why I'm reading it, because of that. And I'll follow it through to its conclusion. But it's okay. It's not horrible, but it's okay. I can't give it a rousing endorsement, but I won't say that it sucks.
Chad Kinsler says it's like they don't want to have Black superhero couples.
That is true.
Well, I mean, that's true. In general, though, to be fair, there are not a lot of superhero couples in comics. Not ones that stay together forever. You have Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic, and who else after that?
You have Mr. and Mrs. Fantastic. You have Clark and Lois, even though Lois doesn't have any powers.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Scott Summers and
Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, and
But
then
they're a thruple, so I don't know even know if that counts anymore.
and Jean Grey. Superhero couples. You had Xavier and Leandra.
They're not
She's
even
dead.
together anymore. She's dead.
Right, she's dead. I don't even know when that happened. Actually, who else? You have Batman and Catwoman, but they don't
They're
have
broken
powers.
up. They're not together anymore.
Okay, yeah, but neither one of them have powers. Over in Marvel, you had Bumblebee and Harold that we never see. Okay,
But that doesn't count because they haven't been in a ongoing book in forever.
right, right.
Think
Who
and
else?
Talon or Monet or Jubilee. What?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I mean, Sync and Talon is a new thing. Sync and Monet
Yeah,
would have been
Secret Talent. Yeah,
interesting. I
right.
mean, that's a thing that bothers me. So Mark just talked about the current state of mutantdom in Marvel Comics, and the fact that all the mutants or the majority of mutants are on this utopia, Krakoa Island. Immortality is a thing. Sync, after being dead for a decade or so in their time, is back. Monet is there. They bring Sync, for those of you who don't remember or don't know, didn't read it back then, Generation X was kind of like the new Mutants back in the 90s. Monet, St. Croix, and Everett Thomas were a couple. They were passionately in love, young love, very much in love. When Everett died, it destroyed Monet. She was broken up over it. So Everett is resurrected, and they haven't done a single scene where Monet talks to Everett, just talks to him and say, "Oh my God, Everett, you're back. Nice to see you." And have Everett, because remember, at the point that Everett died, he was still in love with Monet. So, and time hasn't passed for him. So his mindset is, I died at the point that I'm still in love with this woman, and this woman's my girlfriend. He comes back, and they don't have a single conversation at all. Not even an acknowledgement of their past relationship. Everett gets eventually set on a mission to the vault, the world, which is a world that exists outside of time. Time moves a lot faster there. He goes in there on a mission with Darwin and X-23, Laura Kinney, and they're there for like 500
thousands of years.
Yeah, a ridiculous amount of time. And because he's able to tap into Laura Kinney's power, his aging is slowed down like hers. And they were a couple. They developed a relationship. So long story short, they come back into our world. They're both now into our world. They're both older, and they're a couple. But still, no acknowledgement of Monet and Sync. I mean, that was like a black couple in comics, and the natural thing to do to bring them back together. There's not even a scene explaining why. Just bad writing. Honestly.
Yeah, that happened to a point in time that I have no idea.
That's an editorial decision by the editors in the Mutant House, which I consistently have beef with.
Okay, so we were talking about we were talking about superhero.
I missed a few comments here.
Hold on a second. We were talking about superhero couples. What other superhero couples are there? Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. Jessica's white. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Mal Duncan and Bumblebee. Mal doesn't have any powers. Bumblebee does.
And they haven't been together. They haven't been in the comics for a while. Prodigy and Surge for a while. Prodigy's gay, isn't he?
I don't know.
Prodigy was gay. Anyway. Vixen and Luke Fox appears to be a new relationship. That's true. But that's literally only one issue. There hasn't been talked about ever since.
Speaking of Vixen, sorry to interrupt you. Vixen and Bronze Tiger used to be a thing back in their Suicide Squad days. Forgot about
She also used to be a thing with Green Lantern at one point, wasn't she?
Jon Stewart, really?
I I want to say it was Green Lantern.
I don't recall. Well, I mean, I wasn't a DC guy,
When
but
she was a member of the Justice League. Or was it Black Lightning? It was one of those two guys. Back when she was a member of the Justice League. Anyway, they have Storm hating T'Challa now, so
not they. John Ridley does.
yeah, but the X officers sign off on it because Storm's about to have a new boo thing, and it's not T'Challa. Alex Wilder and Nico again. Nico's
I
not
have no
black,
idea who
so
those
that's not
people
what
are.
we're talking about. Are Falcon and Misty Knight together? Yes.
Well, he's not Falcon. He's Captain America. So Sam Wilson and Misty Knight are together. Yes. And there was a scene or a panel in the
I just can't call the dude Captain America. I'll call
yeah,
him Captain Falcon.
there was a scene in the Cold War issue where Falcon shows up and Misty Knight is there with Sharon Carter, I believe it is, and they're both kind of lusting after Sam. The way he swoops in is looking kind of suave, so that was actually kind of cool. But yes, they are a couple. I did take issue though with the fact that Sam, I hate to say it this way, but I'm gonna say it. Sam is kind of getting Danny's leftovers to a certain degree because Danny was with
Damn, man.
Whitney for years, decades. The two of them were together. It would be nice to have original individuals having never dated.
Hold on. Constantly with this guy. Always
Whatever.
Look, you made it. Look, to your credit, you made it a whole over an hour before I had to play a disclaimer. So
Sure.
You're getting better. I appreciate you.
Whatever.
You're trying.
At the end of the day,
accolades to you, man.
At the end of the day, it would be nice to have it where you have people coming together who had never dated anybody else in the superhero community, So
we're not talking about that, Chad. Let it go.
That's
Lord.
Captain
Wilson. No, I call him Captain Falcon.
Yeah.
That's my Prodigy. Prodigy came out 5 years after new XMen book ended. So I guess he's bi. I don't know.
I have no idea who that character even is. Oh, speaking
he's
of
the guy who can master all knowledge that he learns.
No idea.
And retains it.
No idea. Speaking of people who get around, Dick Grayson.
We're not doing that, man. Are we?
Hold on. We're talking about couples. Oh. Dick Grayson is kind of, a thought to a certain degree, because this dude was dating Coriander, right? He was dating Corey, and wasn't he also kind of dating Barbara
Gordon?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken,
he literally dates the two of them at the same time,
right? And if I'm not mistaken, didn't he sleep with Barbara? And it was like, and after he got done, like, oh, by the way, I'm getting married tomorrow, and here's the invitation to my wedding. Didn't he do that? That's something that memory is telling me. I can't really recall, but
Dick Grayson, I don't know why he gets a pass from the comic book community. He's a man whore. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
the guy literally is dating two women at the same time. They both know about it, and they both seem to be cool with it. So I don't know what to tell you.
Speaking of that, I've been watching. Let's digress for a very brief moment. I've been watching Titans.
C. Cole says Nightwing slept with Huntress too. I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that. Dick Grayson, aka the first original Robin, aka Nightwing. I've been watching the Titan series on DC.
Is that back?
HBO Max, yes.
It's back?
I watched maybe originally the first couple of episodes, let it go, but I've now picked it back up. I've binge watched it over the past 2 weeks. Finished seasons 1 and 2. I'm on seasons 3. There are 4 seasons. I like the show. I like the show. I really do like it. It's very entertaining. What's her name? Something Diop, who plays Starfire.
Anna Diop.
A lot of people were fan casting her as Storm in the MCU, and I can see it. As you are well aware, I'm against anybody being double cast who played one superhero character being cast.
I'll make an exception for her.
The young lady who plays her sister, Blackfire, She's very attractive, and I can see her as
Yes,
Storm.
but she's not as good an actress as Anna Diop.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't
I
know
don't
if I
think
agree
she's
with
as good an actress.
that. I don't know if I agree with that. But all
I
that
think
being
I think she definitely looks the part. Certainly, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, but all that being said, I'm really enjoying the series. It's got basically this is a Young Justice, the animated series live action version. I'm really enjoying the show. Did you ever finish it? Did you ever watch it at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Watch Titans.
So are you like up to date on season 4 or
I didn't know season 4 already dropped. I watched the first 3 seasons though.
so you watch all of seasons 1 through 3?
1 through 3. Yeah, I've been watching it since the very beginning.
Yeah, season 4 is out now.
I'll go check it out. I didn't know it was already dropped yet.
Did you watch Krypton?
No, I've never watched Krypton. I've never
Okay.
watched Krypton or Superman and Lois. Mostly because I can't stand the actress playing Lois.
Sleep on Superman is very good. Superman and Lois is very good.
Yes, it's on
Is it on
HBO
HBO
Max.
Max? Yes. Titans is on HBO Max. And I like there was an episode in season 2 where they introduced Superboy. And it's basically like they got the Young Justice script and gave it to the live action version of the show. I am enjoying it. The only issue.
Let's finish up these comics and we'll
Yeah.
do a segment on the television shows.
All right, cool.
So next up we have how do I do this? Oh man, now you've got me all messed up. There we go. This book, a lot of people slept on. First of all, this cover is dope as hell.
Yes.
This
Yes,
cover
it
is
is.
dope.
Yes, it is.
To backtrack a bit, one of the things I love to talk about is Image Comics in the 90s. Loved Image Comics in the 90s. I collected a lot of those Image Comics in the 90s. Comics that you can easily find literally in dollar bins today.
Let me interject this real quick. Image Comics in the 90s, there were mostly teen books. Each one was basically an iteration of the X-Men.
The X-Men,
If we're
yeah.
being honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Jim Lee, Image was made up. Each of the 5 or 6 Image founders had their own studios within Image. Rob Liefeld had whatever the hell his group was called. Marc Silvestri had Top Cow. Eric Larson had Eric Larson Savage Dragon. He basically just did Savage Dragon. Jim
Todd
Valentino.
McFarlane had Spawn.
What?
Todd McFarlane had Spawn.
Yeah, Todd McFarlane had his studios. Jim Valentino had his own studios. Jim Lee was probably the most successful in terms of having his studios within Image grow. Jim Lee invented what is called Wildstorm Studios. Now, the cool thing about the 90s, all these artists were emulated by other people, other artists. A lot of artists emulated these Image artists. But probably the most emulated artist of all of the Image artists was Jim Lee. A lot of people emulated his style. Specifically, his Wildstorm Studios consisted of a lot of artists that somewhat emulated his style. And he had some of my favorite books, starting with Stormwatch, which was, although Mark said the majority of these teams were kind of like X-Men teams, Stormwatch was much more like the Avengers because it consisted of powerful metahumans from across the world who were recruited by the United Nations to be their premier super team to do crisis intervention throughout the world. What I loved the most about Image Comics in the 90s, and I have a video on this on our YouTube channel, by the way, about Image Comics in the 90s. Image had a lot of black characters, a lot in lead positions. Shadowhawk, Chapel, Spawn. The one from this Wildstorm book was called Jackson King. He's the guy you see in the background there with the red suit with the dome
His
over his
his
head.
cover name was his superhero
Battalion.
name was Battalion.
Battalion. This guy was a psionic character. He had telepathy and telekinesis abilities, kind of like
Cable. He's basically Cable.
he's basically Cable or Jean Grey.
Black Cable.
He uses that suit to enhance and help him hone his powers. But then that suit also had an array of weapons that were controlled by his powers. So he was a badass. He was literally a human battalion by himself. Not in addition to that, his father was one of those humans that was mutated by the passing of this cosmic asteroid storm or whatever it was that gave a bunch of people powers at the time. His father was a member of what's called Team One. I don't want to go through the whole history of it, but suffice it to say, he kind of inherited his powers from his father, who was also powerful, and he ultimately became a villain. But Battalion and his brother had powers. Battalion was groomed basically from youth to become a superhero, and he was recruited by Stormwatch to become the leader of their premier team. He was Captain America, Cable, and Nick Fury all rolled up into one character. Complete badass character. I love this guy. And so they brought him back and merged Wildstorm in DC was already sort of merged somewhat when Jim Lee took over DC Comics. But this was the first sort of formal acknowledgement of Amanda Waller being involved with these Wildstorm characters. And what makes this book dope for me, I think if you're not someone who was into Wildstorm, you're probably not going to get how dope this book is, to be honest with you. It may not resonate for you. It may be a waste of your time to read it. But if you were a Wildstorm person, seeing how they merged the Wildstorm and DC Universe backstories together is kind of cool, because you kind of, and as a first of all, if you talk about, and we talk about this subject on this space all the time, who is the premier DC black woman character?
It's Amanda Waller.
It is Amanda Waller.
Okay, for those who don't know, Amanda Waller is a regular human being who's got a degree in political science. Amanda Waller is a bureaucrat. I don't recall the book that she was introduced into.
She was introduced in Legends,
right? Number one, I think, one or three.
Yeah.
Right. But basically, Amanda Waller is
which is a cheap book. You can get that book for less than $20 anywhere.
And she was the one who was in charge back in the 80s of the Suicide Squad. Okay. And she, if you watched the Justice League, she was one of the nemesis of the Justice League because she was involved with Cadmus. And Amanda Waller is a complete and total badass because she relies on her intellect and her connections to control all these superhero characters. Now, for me, I am a huge Deathstroke Slade Wilson fan. As you can see, he's on the cover of this book at the bottom. He's one of my favorite characters in all of comic books. Amanda Waller is one of my favorites as well because they've got her as a nemesis to people with powers, and she's got nothing but a damn advanced degree. You know what I'm saying? So I absolutely love Amanda Waller. I love this book. And I liked, as Paul just said, how they integrated the Image universe with the DC universe. So one of the first times that I ever saw them do that is if you watch any of the DC animated universe, the first time that I recall them doing that was in the Flashpoint cartoon because there's a character by the name of Grifter who is a dude he's kind of like Captain America to a certain degree, but he uses guns. And he wears like a red bandana over his face. He showed up and appeared in the Flashpoint series when Atlantis was fighting the Amazons of Themyscira. That was the first time that I saw that. Now it's kind of transferring over into comic books, and I'm sure it's happened before this particular book, but from my recollection, this is the first time that I've seen it in print where you have DC and Image combining, because Grifter shows up in this book as well. Really, really like this book. The only thing I don't like about this book, it's bigger than your average regular comics. So to store it in my collection, it's gonna be a
Yeah, you
pain in
gotta
the
get
ass, because
get a magazine bag
right,
and
it's the
board.
magazine size. See, Mosley is standard size. This book is not standard size, so that's only going to be the only bone of contention. But I'm really, really enjoying this book a lot.
Yeah, I mean the way they merged universes together was dope. Um, you see classic Amanda Waller, conniving, brilliant tactician in this book, and you don't even realize you're seeing it, which is what makes it that much dope.
And this is
Um,
Amanda when she first became a bureaucrat, when she first started working for the government, and
yeah,
she's using her intellect to,
in essence, it's
chess
kind of
pieces to
it's kind
cross
of an
the board.
origin story for her in
Kind
some
of it
respect.
is. It kind of is. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Because when she
and
meets Battalion, she's just a low level station chief, like say somebody in the CIA. She's in charge of this particular black ops site without giving too much spoilers. And she meets Battalion, who at that point is still a legend. It's a very, very good book. Lois Lane is in the book. Deathstroke is in the book. Um, yeah,
this
yeah.
was a dope read. I don't know, was this a one shot or is it gonna be more?
I have the feeling that this is going to be an ongoing, because it says book one. So I don't know how many
Yeah, I need
issues it's
some
going to
more of
be.
this. Shout out to Evan Narciss, who we've interviewed on this channel. Dope writer. He was a co-writer of this book.
Along
I
with
really I
Spencer
really enjoyed
Ackerman.
this book. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm definitely thirsting for more.
Yep. And this is the last page with one of my, like I said, with my favorite characters, Deathstroke. Love this book.
C. Cole says he thinks it's 6 issues. I hope so because this was
Yeah,
this was a dope book.
yeah. Just don't like the size of it.
All right, so next book, Photon. This is number 4. Look, shout out to Eve Ewing, Professor Eve Ewing. We interviewed her on this channel. Feel free to check it out on our YouTube channel.
But
Um, I love what she's doing with Monica Rambeau. She said it herself in her interview. The only negative about writing the story is that they only gave her 5 issues, and she has a much much bigger story to tell, and it shows in her writing. And that's not to say that it's slow paced or world building or anything like that. It's she's actually the opposite of that when it comes to her writing, which is one of the things I love about her, is that she packs a lot of world building, character development, action, and Easter eggs in every single issue, and she doesn't get enough credit for that.
I will agree with that. Yeah, there's a lot of content in this book.
Yeah, I mean she does her research. She knows her background, and she drops the Easter eggs that she drops. They could teach courses on this stuff, man. If you're an old comic book head who's really into the Marvel universe, you'll recognize the amount of Easter eggs that she drops in these books. It's significant.
The only issue that I personally have is that Eve has Monica talking in a way that I'm not accustomed to. I grew up on Monica back in the 90s when she was with the Avengers. And Monica of that time period was more, I don't want to say professional, but more reserved, more conservative. This Monica uses more colloquial expressions, around the way type girl, or whatever the case may be. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I'm accustomed to with this person being. I'm accustomed to Monica being kind of like Michelle Obama, and Eve has her kind of like Taraji P. Henson. You know what I'm saying? And there's
Yeah,
nothing
that's because
wrong.
Monica's never been written by a black woman before. How many
And
times
that's
has a
fine.
black woman ever
Listen,
written
I get
Monica
that. I
Rambeau?
understand that. I'm just saying what I'm accustomed to. And, there's a voice that we become accustomed to with characters, like with Black Panther as an example.
I
The
get that.
voice that person who shall not be named had T'Challa speaking in is not what we were accustomed to.
Yeah, but the difference between the voice that the man who will not be named on this channel by me ever again um, gave to T'Challa and what Eve Ewing's done with Monica are two different things, because he wrote T'Challa in a way that didn't make sense for that character. He is an African king. There's no reason that he should be using Western
Colloquial
colloquialism
expression. Yeah, I agree with
that
you.
he was using. Monica is a black, an African American woman from Louisiana.
Don't
If
disagree.
anything, I would argue that all the years that we've seen her, the way that she's written and how she speaks, is probably more inaccurate than how Eve has her speaking.
Well,
So I actually disagree with you. I like her voice under Eve. It is the most real and the most identifiable Monica Rambeau I have seen to date. It's my
you can
favorite
have
version.
people who are raised in the same city but speak in different voices.
I
And
get that. I agree with that.
you know what I'm
I get
saying?
that.
And so the voice of Monica in the 80s and 90s was a more conservative, reserved voice. And I personally kind of like that. You know what I'm saying?
I guess it's
Well,
a
I'm not
matter
gonna
of
say I
personal
like it.
preference.
That's what I'm accustomed to. You know? And I'm not saying the way that the Eve has Monica written now is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm enjoying this book immensely. It's just that I'm not accustomed to Monica speaking in this manner, you know.
Yeah,
So,
and she's
but I
done.
do enjoy the book.
Professor Ewing has done some power set building on her powers. She has upped her power levels quietly. She has Monica teleporting people. Never happened before. She had Monica go to another dimension and say that she is a cosmic. Understand, in this run, it has been now established Monica is a cosmic level power character. Who do we know of as cosmic level powered characters? Silver Surfer, Galactus, Thanos. These are cosmic level characters. Monica is now established as a cosmic level character.
Yeah.
Throw Ghostlight in there.
Monica,
I
here's the
don't want to hear
thing.
about that
Monica
conversation.
can honestly beat most of your favorite superheroes that are out there. As an example, one of the main baddest ass superheroes that are out there is John Jones, aka Martian Manhunter. I don't think that he gets anywhere near the credit that he deserves for his skill and power set.
Yeah.
You've got somebody who's like
he's Superman,
Professor X, Superman, Mystique, all rolled up into one character. Monica, with her power set, being able to transport herself or transform herself into any form of pretty much energy and radiation, she can destroy pretty much any hero that you can think of that's out there. There's not enough prep time that Batman could have that he could do anything to Monica Rambeau. Okay. I like the fact that she is probably one of the most underrated, most powerful superheroes in Marvel. I enjoy it. I do like it.
I wouldn't say that I enjoy that fact, but I recognize that fact that she is the most underutilized, underrated power.
No, and I'm not saying I'm enjoying the fact that she's underrated or underutilized. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying.
Mario Van Bryson's asking, do you think Eve will continue Monica's story arc in the Black Panther's run? I asked her kind of that question, I believe, in her interview with her. I don't think that's a high priority for her. I think she's going to have her hands full dealing with the mess that's been left behind by her predecessor. Gordon says Monica's a boss. Mario says in Hudlin's Black Panther run, T'Challa taught Monica how to use her powers more effectively. That's true. And he spat mad game to her and had her looking at him kind of funny at the same time. I remember she had the X-Men shook in the first X-Men versus Avengers from the 1980s. Yep.
I've got that book. I don't even remember.
Sean says Martian Manhunter gets buried far too much. It's a shame more just won't be done with him. That's facts. That's facts. I mean, Martian Manhunter has the same power level as Superman. Not almost as, he is as strong as Superman.
Imagine Superman with Professor X level telepathy. You know,
and the ability to emulate anyone like Mystique.
And oh, by the way, he can transform himself. Oh, by the way, he can make himself intangible like Vision. He's got like 5 or 6 major superhero powers all rolled up into one. Martian Manhunter is that dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm huge fan of Martian Manhunter.
How the hell is he not the leader of the Justice League is beyond me. Mario asked, did Eve ever explain why Monica and Adam broke up? Not yet. Not yet. No, there's one more issue. Hopefully she can bring them back together. She did mention not why she broke them up per se, but she said, you know, oftentimes, I think I would say more what she alluded to. I think where her stance or where the perspective she's taking on this is, oftentimes, particularly when you have super heroines, women characters in comics, they're too often defined by their male counterparts. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of the X office's take on Storm is with their relationship with T'Challa. It's kind of like, we don't want Storm to be with T'Challa because she is less than when she's with T'Challa. Now, I can give you an entire dissertation as to why that's incorrect, and the fact that Black Panther's writers have made Storm much more of a solid character than the X writers have ever done until recently. But I understand the argument that you can't have a character defined by who they're in a relationship with. And so I think Dr.
Mary Jane Watson.
What?
Unless it's Mary Jane Watson.
Well, Mary Jane Watson is not a superhero, so that's I don't really equate the two. I understand the perspective of wanting, because Monica's never really been defined outside of a team aspect. This is the first time you've had a deep dive as to who she is on her own. She's only had 2 one-shots before this. All other Monica Rambeau appearances have been either guest appearances in someone else's book or her part of a team book. Monica's never had, this is her first run, solo run, that she's ever had in her 40 years of history.
It's crazy how Naomi is younger than her and has had 2, 6 series.
So I think the breakup between her and Adam really had to do more with that. A lot of Black heroes can take out other, but we never get to see those stories because certain folks can't accept a Black person doing that. It's true. Persilis Dragon Ball says, did they break up? I thought we weren't just seeing Adam yet. No, they were broken up.
They had them break up.
They had a breakup in the book.
Yeah.
They never showed the basis of the breakup or the actual breakup. Just said that they're no longer together. Just a guy in a Sue Storm. What about Sue Storm?
She was defined by Reed Richards, but over the past 20 years or so, they've made her more her own character.
The early Fantastic Four runs with
Sue Storm, during the height of misogyny, and she was Invisible Girl, even though she was a woman, and she was always this damsel in distress. But in the 90s, they moved away from that, and now she's very, very, very powerful. I don't know if anybody's reading the Fantastic Four book, but they had Sue do something that basically could destroy the Earth. and it was just a non-issue for her with her power set. Sue was very, very, extremely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, uh, early Sue Storm Fantastic Four
Cringy,
was
cringeworthy.
very cringy, very cringy. The way that Reed spoke to her, spoke down to her, condescended to her.
But
That
she,
was, if you read those early issues of Fantastic Four, I mean, misogyny is dead on when you talk about the way that she was treated um, by the writers and particularly by Reed Richards. Uh,
Sue is quite frankly the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, bar none.
yeah, yeah,
Because
physically powers. Yeah,
she can create invisible bubbles in your brain to give you an aneurysm. You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? And you would never know it was happening. So Sue is by far the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four.
C. Cole brings up a good point. Naomi had Bendis behind her. Monica never got anyone behind her beside McDuffie, and now Dr. E. Ewing. This brings up a larger point. You know, these characters are only as powerful and as developed
Important as
as
their
the
writers want them to
writers
be.
as the writers that write them are, and the editors allow them, the writers, to allow them to be. When people say, well, could this character beat up this character, the answer to that question in every instance is it depends on who the writer is. Could T'Challa beat up Captain America? Could Captain America beat up T'Challa? It depends on who's writing him at the time.
You've got writers who have Squirrel Girl defeating Galactus, so that tells you everything that you need to know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people are like, well, it's canon because it happened in the comics. Sure, you're absolutely correct. It's canon if it happens in the 616 universe in Marvel Comics.
Here's
But
something that's interesting about what C. Cole just said. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Naomi had Bendis behind her. What's interesting is that Bendis is a Caucasian writer. He's a Caucasian creator. You've mentioned before how there have been what we would consider established black creators, Jeffrey Thorne, who have to beg and plead to be able to do anything in some of these big companies. But you have people like Tom Taylor or Bendis or whomever that they can just say, okay, well, this is my name, this is who I am. They get the keys to the city to be able to do whatever they want. Whereas black creators don't have that luxury and leeway in the three big majors being DC, Marvel, and Image.
on that point, I would encourage all of you who want to learn more about what Mark just said. Verbatim, Dr. Ewing, in our interview with her, talks about that very same subject. Um, when you're a mega writer, you know, you're a hot shot mega writer, and those guys are brilliant. They deserve their accolades. This is not the detract from them at all. They deserve the accolades and and rights that they have garnered for themselves. We're talking your Bendises, your Brian Michael Bendises,
Your Hickmans, your Tom
your Jonathan
Taylors.
Hickmans, your Tom Taylors, your Chip Zdarsky's. These are mega writers. These are guys that can Millars. These are writers that are so good at their craft. They are, in essence, given a blank check when it comes to doing comics. If
Tom
they
Taylor
walk
has
into
like
it,
three projects going on, right? At least three.
so if they walk into a comic publisher and say, I have an idea for a comic, the publisher says, here's all the resources that you want. Here's your check, do whatever you want, and we'll check back in with you later on. That's what they do, like literally. But for the majority of other creators, particularly creators of color, that doesn't happen. I can't think of any creator of color, including Dwayne McDuffie himself, one of the greatest creators of all time,
R.I.P.
who has ever had the carpet rolled out for them and given the privilege of saying, you can do whatever you like. Go ahead and run with it. We trust you.
Maybe
We
Christopher
trust you.
Priest. Maybe Christopher Priest, because over the past, say,
I
10,
don't think
15
you need
years,
Christopher.
I said maybe. I said maybe. Christopher Priest, because he's done a lot of different things over in DC specifically. He was given a Justice League title. He was writing Deathstroke, and I'm sure he was doing some other stuff that I can't think of right now over in DC. But he's the only one. Paul
Yeah, I
and
mean,
I have.
I agree with you. I think if there's a writer, a black writer, who has the closest ability at that level, it's probably Priest.
Right. And, one of the things that Paul and I have said is that Paul and I are both huge T'Challa Black Panther fans. He and I have both said that Jeffrey Thorne has written the single best single issue of Black Panther ever in the King in Black storyline. But I think Paul interviewed him talking about how he had ideas about the way or the direction T'Challa should take. But Marvel was like, don't call us, we'll call you. And then we got what we got in Volume 8. Jeffrey Thorne would have been a perfect follow up to Ta-Nehisi Coates. You know what I'm saying? Because he understands the character. Mr. Thorne, wrote him the way that he should be written in that one shot. You know what I'm saying? But being a black creator, it does not seem to me that Marvel places the same value in his creative juices the way that they give to Hickman, Bendis, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It is what it is. I would suggest you check out the Eve Ewing interview. She goes into detail about it. It's very interesting. Want to finish up these comics so we can go to commercial and talk about the other stuff we want to talk about. Next book that we have is Bloodline, Daughter of Blade, issue number 3. This one moved a bit of a pace. I mean, you got Bloodline to finally meet and have a conversation with and talk to her father, Blade, about who he is, where her background is, and why he hasn't been around.
And what she is.
And really establish their relationship and their working relationship going forward. And I like the fact, shout out to Danny Lore by not making this one of those angsty teen, well, I hate you because you weren't around. When he gives the explanation as to why he wasn't around, instead of saying, well, I still hate you, you suck, she's like, that makes sense. I get it. Can I call you dad? Or pops? I was like, I thank you for that, because now we're on issue 3. It's like a 5-issue run. Let's get to the heart of it and not deal with a bunch of angsty bullshit. So I thought it was kind of cool.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't know
if I'm a huge fan of the art. The art I don't know that I'm a fan of it. Let me just say it that way.
I agree with you. I mean, I honestly think, and it's not that the art is bad, I just don't think the art is appropriate for this particular book.
Yeah,
I think there's an art style that probably would have worked better for this particular book.
For me, I just don't. All due respect to the artist is Karen Darboe.
Darboe, yes.
Darboe. I mean, all due respect to her. She can draw. I just don't. I would see this art style on like an independent book. There's a book that I collect called Barbaric, and her art style reminds me of the art that's in Barbaric.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't suck. It does not suck. I just
it may be that my perception is colored by the other vampire book I read, being Philadelphia, which is Jason Sean Alexander.
Well, that's unfair to Karen, and I understand what
you're saying. It is tremendously unfair to Karen.
That's unfair to her.
I'm just saying, tone-wise, they're both vampire books.
They are, but just keeping Philadelphia for me out of the conversation. I just don't know that I like this art style personally.
Yeah.
It does not suck. I just can't say.
No, it's just I don't think it's the right art style for this book.
I do like the story. I absolutely do like the story.
Danny Lore is doing a good job. Gordon Mahan says Priest did say in an interview that he was surprised that DC allowed him to do what he wanted the Black Adam series.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't like what he's doing on Black Adam. I don't like it at all. Priest is a legend in the industry, but the way I'm a huge Black Adam fan, he's like top 5 characters for me.
The art
I
was Black Manta was bad. I
right.
disagree.
I
I actually
expect
like Deandro Valentino, I believe his name is. I like his art style. That's just my.
I expect Black Adam, Teth Adam, to act in a certain way. The way that Christopher Priest has written him, it's more modern, and I don't like it. I expect him to be. I expect Teth to be more reserved. If you read the what was that storyline called? The 52
52.
storyline,
Yeah.
right? That's who Teth Adam, Black Adam is to me. That's what I envision him to be. What Christopher Priest has done with him is different. He's more modern, and he's not regal. In the 52 storyline, Teth Adam was regal. In what we have now, he's not, in my opinion.
Well, he's
Not
damaged, and
I mean, you can be damaged and still regal. Thor has been damaged a lot, but it's still regal and kingly or princely. That's not how I view the way that Christopher Priest has written them. I'm collecting it, I'm reading it, but it's just, yeah, that's the aspect that I don't necessarily like.
I like the fact that the character Bolt is named Malik White, which was, well, I don't want to get into that. Last book for us to talk about. This is actually second to last book that we're going to talk about. Surprise book. Surprise to me how much I enjoyed this book. And I'm almost ashamed to say I did. Corju, written by Jerry Duggan of XMen fame. Jerry Duggan is one of the best XMen writers out there. He's not quite at Al Ewing's level, but he's pretty damn close.
What company is that? Image.
This is an Image book. Now, let me explain. Because some of you will eventually read this and go, what the hell was Paul thinking when he recommended this book? If you're into kaiju and mecha, you'll appreciate this book. That's what this book is. It's about kaiju and attacking a city, classic style, and people having to deal with it. The difference is Jerry Duggan, who I've typically only known from Marvel Comics and the restraints that gives, is writing an Image book where those restraints don't exist. And so you have a very different voice from old Jerry in this book. I'm trying to describe to you what happens in this book without doing spoilers, but I will say to you this. This is a very mature book. Do not have children read this book. It is not for the kids. It's not Wu-Tang. It's not for the children. This is a very adult book, and there are things that happen which were very adult but tremendously funny. And I would say unprecedented in a comic book. If the Comics Code Authority exists today, this book would never have been made. I'll leave it at that. But it was entertaining. I laughed out loud at a couple parts because I'm like, how did they even get away with doing that? Let me put to you like this. Did you watch television show The Boys?
Come on, man.
All right. Do you remember what is it called? Nerdgasm episgasm Is that what it was called? What was the name of that episode?
Yeah.
Herogasm.
Herogasm, yes. In the last series, Basically, superheroes get together for an orgy. That's what it
Okay.
boils down to.
Do you remember how raw that episode was when you watched it on television? You're like, how the hell did they get away with that?
Yep.
They have some stuff like that in this book where you're like, how the hell did they get away with? Wow. There's a black lead character who you see on the cover there, who's a scientist who predicted that all this was going to happen. This kaiju was going to attack, and the government tries to recruit him back to help them fight this kaiju who's attacking the city. This book is called Korju by Jerry Duggan. If you want a book that is off the beaten path, is funny, adult, but funny, because it's just so ridiculously off the wall and outrageous, this is the book for you. If you got to have the sense of humor to appreciate this book, or else I'm telling you, you're wasting your money. I'll tell you that up front. Don't come to me and this book sucks. You have to have a particular type of really weird sense of humor to appreciate this book. But if you do, you'll find it funny. As Mario said, yes, mature but a fun read. The building scene. You're doing spoilers. Yes, there's a scene with a building which is different. All right, so our last book, I could not end this week without recognizing the sheer brilliance, fun, and history-making that is Silver Surfer Ghostlight, number 3. Look here, people. If you're not buying this book and you're not familiar with this character, shame on you. Why are you even on this channel? But I will say this. If you have not done so already, check out a couple of the interviews we've done with John Jennings regarding this character. For those of you who don't know, there was a Silver Surfer comic book. I'm being coy. Silver Surfer number 5, the very 5th Silver Surfer issue of all time that came out in 1969, early 1969, introduced a character by the name of Al B. Harper, who...
No relation to Al B. Shore.
You can see the artwork, original artwork here, or reproduction of the original artwork from Silver Surfer number 5 right here. Al B. Harper is a scientist who finds a Silver Surfer in the woods after he falls to Earth when he tries to penetrate a barrier he can't penetrate surrounding the Earth. He helps him develop a device that allows him to break the barrier so he can escape Earth. There's a villain called the Stranger, long story short, who tries to destroy the Earth. Al Harper sacrifices himself to literally save the entire planet Earth from destruction. Stan Lee invented this character. It's a Stan Lee character, Al Harper. He's written as a hero. He's drawn as a hero. Same way that you'd see a Sam Wilson or a Steve Rogers, he looks heroic, and intentionally so, because he performed a heroic deed at the end of the issue. It was also Stan Lee's coy way of dealing with race relations as Silver Surfer goes out into the world with his different looking form and experiences racism, so to speak. Prejudice, I should say, for looking different. So much so that Silver Surfer's like, Earth is trash. I need to get off this mud ball. Al Harper helped me get off this mud ball. This place sucks. But in Al's sacrifice of himself, Silver Surfer learns to look at the Earth in a different light and humanity in a different light. So much so that over Al Harper's grave, he puts an eternal flame to burn of cosmic energy. Long story short, you have in this story, Al Harper's back. It wasn't just the eternal cosmic flame that brought him back, but you find out in the story before this, in issue 2, and in this story, what happened to him, where he has been. Um, I don't want to give any spoilers. The most important thing to recognize about this whole series is this: Al Harper is an original Stan Lee creation. Al Harper precedes Marvel Comics' first black superhero, African American superhero, Sam Wilson, by about 6 months. Al Harper is now a cosmic level superhero called Ghostlight. In a algebraic, logical way, retroactively speaking, in the Marvel universe, Al Harper is kind of Marvel's, you know, first African American superhero now, as a result, because he preceded Sam Wilson. Not to say first black hero, because that would be T'Challa. I'm talking African American hero, Al Harper. He's also a cosmic level hero. His buddy Silver Surfer. You don't have too many cosmic level black superheroes. We just discussed Monica Rambeau. That's just in this run, that she's been recognized and elevated by Dr. Ewing as a cosmic level superhero. There are not that many out there. So now Al Harper is one of those. I hope and pray this book does well. I hope and pray all of you are buying this book because of the history that it's making, so that Marvel will continue to allow the character to continue to exist. And he does not get the same treatment that Blue Marvel got. Kevin Greavy created one of the most powerful Marvel heroes of all time in the Blue Marvel. Original black superhero. Not a legacy character, an original black superhero created by a black creator.
A member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Right? Who is both brilliant in mind and in power, physical power. Right? How many series did he get after that?
He went Blue Marvel went unaddressed for years because he made his first appearance in his limited series that came out in 2004, 2003, something like that. You don't see him again, really, I don't think, for another 10 years until he pops up in the Avengers, or what was that called?
Mighty Avengers.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Mighty Avengers, then the Ultimates, and most recently in the Defenders.
Right.
So here's the thing. Kevin Greavy created this incredibly powerful character, and they would not allow him to continue with the book. They shelved the character. He remains shelved to this day. He'll make little appearances here and there. He was in Defenders recently. But he doesn't
have his own ongoing title.
He does not have his own ongoing title. Fine. Black characters don't often get their own ongoing titles, but at least they'll get a background position on a team. Not even that. He's too powerful for the Marvel Universe. They can say the common statement is, we have plans for him. They've had plans for him for 10 years. Still, nothing's done. They always have plans for him.
15 years. He was
created. If that brother doesn't show up, let me tell you, if he doesn't show up in the Marvels movie that we just saw the trailer for a few days ago, there's an actor cast in that, the same actor that's in the John Wick 4 movie. I forget his name. If that actor is not playing Adam Brashear and shows up in that movie, then all that crap that we've heard for the last decade about we have plans for him has been just that, just BS. We don't want to see that same thing happen with Ghostlight. John Jennings, Professor Jennings, big up to you, man. He created another character like that. Brilliant, powerful. Moreover, he didn't create him per se. He created Ghostlight. Moreover, Al Harper was created by Stan Lee himself. So he is a legacy character. He is part of Marvel's history from the very beginning, 1969. We don't want to see that character go away. It's important that we buy this book. I can't emphasize it enough, so that it can continue on, this character continue on and not get shelved like they did Blue Marvel. You say you guys complain all the time. I hear it all the time in these space. I don't got any good comic books to read. There's no original black characters. I only support the Hoteps go. I only want to support original black characters created by black men.
So basically, what Paul just mentioned, going back to the whole Blue Marvel thing and the movie The Marvels, the actor that he mentioned is Shamir Anderson. Shamir Anderson appears, it has a pretty big role in John Wick 4. If you have not seen John Wick 4, you have got to watch John Wick 4. Another movie that you may have seen Shamir Anderson, or something that you may have seen Shamir Anderson is, there was a limited series called Invasion. I don't know what platform it was on, but it was actually really good. I enjoyed it. The planet was invaded by aliens, and it was very good. He was also in a Halle Berry. Halle Berry made her directorial debut in a movie called what was it called? Awake or Bruiser? Awake. Well, anyway, Halle Berry played an MMA competitor. Shamir Anderson was in that. That's another project that he was in. But something that a lot of people don't know is Shamir Anderson is the brother of Stephen James. Stephen James is one of my top 5 actors to replace Chadwick Boseman, God rest his soul, as T'Challa. Stephen James, you may know from the movie Race, where he played Jesse Owens. He starred alongside Chadwick Boseman in the movie 21 Bridges. So that's the lineage that Shamir Anderson comes from. And, you know, as Paul just said, we know that Shamir is in the movie The Marvels, although his character that he's playing has not ever been defined. But how can you have a movie about the quote unquote Marvels, Captain, Miss, and Photon, and not have Blue? And that's been the scuttlebutt for a while now, that Shamir is playing Adam Brashear. Now, he would not have been my first, second, third, or fourth choice, but he's a very good actor. And so I would accept his portrayal of Adam Brashear. So, yeah.
All right. So we have just completed our segments on comics. And when we get back, we're going to talk about topics of the week and whatever else goes through our whiskey-addled and infused minds. With that, let's take a break.
Have you ever wanted to read a story with a poetic musical twist? Batman Jazz is that John, written by Gerard Jones and illustrated by Marc Badger. The story is about a legendary jazz musician and his desire to play jazz when and where he wants to. There are lots of twists and turns in this story, but suffice to say that Bluebird, who the story is about, shares more than his love for jazz, but he makes a point to teach Batman a thing or two. It's a great story. It's gritty, it's poetic, it's reflective. It's aptly titled Batman Jazz. It's a 3-issue mini. I'm sure you will enjoy it. It'll be a welcome addition to your collection. And please, if you like this video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for listening. Peace.
So here's the thing. My man, Rich, OG Rich, triple OG, King Richard, the Panther Hearted, made an interesting post. I think it was today or yesterday. Might have been today. Here's the post. It had me thinking. Let me show you this. Where is it now? It's always when you're looking for stuff you can't find it. But yeah, here it is. He says, sometimes I look at the fandom and I'm just really wondering, does anybody like anything? I promise, and I'm talking myself as well, we don't deserve none of 50, 11 million shows, comics, games, movies, period. I wish I could teleport all y'all back to the mid-1970s before Star Wars and leave you Bama there for 10 years with the same 3 channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS, to watch and Pong to play. That's what my brother Rich said. And it had me thinking. You know, one of the things about being an admin in these spaces is I get to see a lot of people's comments about these topics and things, comments, or critiques about comic books and just blurred culture in general. And one thing I've learned is particularly, and I don't want this to sort of spiral into an ageism thing because I'm an old person at this point.
But that's what it boils down to.
But that's what this kind of boils down to. For the younger generation, they complain about, well, I don't get this, and we need this, and understand. I was looking recently at a trailer that Star Wars Lucasfilms released for a Disney cartoon, a Pixar-looking cartoon for a Star Wars series called like Jedi Academy or something.
I've seen that.
That starred little kids in a Pixar animated feature with little kid Jedi, right? Had a black lead, a black male lead Jedi. I'm thinking I was exposed to Star Wars in 1977 when I was 5 years old. I remember my parents taking me to go see that film. I remember sitting next to my mom in the theater when I was 5, seeing that film. I remember when Luke Skywalker was talking to Ben Kenobi in his hut, and he pulled out this little silver, rod-looking thing, and he's flailing about with it, and he activated it, and this blue light came out. I remember to this day, I jumped out of my seat in the theater. It shocked me. It startled me, seeing a lightsaber for the first time. The sound of it in the theater and the flash of light, it startled me. But I was amazed. A laser sword, And that was me at 5. I wonder what the experience would be like for me as a 5-year-old today, if I was a 5-year-old today. And my first introduction to Star Wars was seeing a cartoon. Because remember, Star Wars never had a single black person in it. I think when George Lucas redid the film in 1997 and added digital effects and some of the old deleted footage, he added it to the original film that he was redoing. He had added a deleted scene where there was a black person in the background in Tatooine. Prior to that, it was the whitest film you could ever see. I love Star Wars, but there was no black people in the original Star Wars movie. So when Empire Strikes Back came out and Lando Calrissian was introduced, it was a big thing for me because it showed agency. It showed that we existed in a galaxy far, far away in a futuristic society. But if I was a kid today and I was 5, and my first experience was seeing that cartoon, which is what it's geared towards, right? Kids. And I see another young boy, a black boy who is a Jedi in the Star Wars universe. I can't even wrap my brain about the concept of seeing someone who looks like me, who I can identify with, who I can get a lunchbox of, who I can dress up as at Halloween and say, I can be just like him. Mark and I didn't have those type of role models when we were kids. That stuff didn't exist. We didn't have a Black Panther movie. You know, we didn't have, a Mace Windu at that time. When I hear the complaints about, and this is not to say we should be satisfied with the level of representation that we have today. This is not what I'm saying. It's not. But the levels of underappreciation for what you do have is astounding to me. Because for me, this is an incredible time. This week, I got to watch new episodes of Star Trek with Picard from the Next Generation, from back in the 80s. New episodes. The show's great. I got to watch The Mandalorian, which is the best Star Wars I've seen in 20 years. Right? There are multiple Star Wars shows on television. There are multiple Star Trek shows that I can watch. New shows. There are comic books. When I walk into an LCS and I go to a rack on the shelves, there are loads, in comparison to what my childhood was like, loads of comic books with faces on the covers of people that look like me. That didn't exist when I was a kid. It's just a different. It's an interesting time that we live in, and I kind of a little bit jealous of the fact of the youth of today that get to experience that and have many more years of that experience and more to come in the future for themselves. A lot more than I do have. But the lack of appreciation for what they have available today is astounding to me.
When you go
Comparison to what
into
Mark and I had when we were young.
when you go into any mall, no matter what city and state that you live in, you can go into any mall, and I can guarantee you, in the mall in your local area, you will find no less than 4 separate stores in that mall that has nerd type content in there. By that I mean paraphernalia. I mean t-shirts, comic books, all kinds of merch that involves sci-fi stuff, comic book stuff, anime stuff. No matter what you're into, you will find that anywhere. Hell, you can find that in Target and Walmart. When I was a kid, you weren't going into just any random store and finding shirts of Superman, Black Panther, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, any superhero that you're a fan of, or any stuff that you were a fan of. It wasn't easily accessible to you. And I think that people now are spoiled in that regard because they've grown up since the 90s having access to this type of stuff. Not only content on TV, but going shopping. I was in some store the other day, or in line at some business the other day, and some dude who doesn't quote unquote look like a nerd had on an anime shirt. The stuff is ubiquitous at this point. And I don't think that people really understand or realize just how good they have it when it comes to merchandise and content. There is so much out there. For example, I like anime. Hulu, Netflix, Tubi, Freevee, Crunchyroll,
Crunchyroll.
Funimation. That's 6 different streaming platforms. Oh, Amazon Prime, 7. There are so many different platforms that you can see stuff on that is quite frankly overwhelming. You know what I'm saying? In a very good way, but people just don't understand how good they have it. But when you have access to that much, it leads to, I'm not going to say devaluing it, but the appreciation somewhat diminishes because it's like, okay, well, I've got so much, I can pick and choose what I want. Back in my day in the 70s and 80s, and yes, I'm sounding like an old man, stay off my yard, we had very few things. We had Captain Harlock, we had Robotech, we had Star Blazers, Battle of the
G
Planets,
Force Battle of the Planets.
Battle of the Planets. That's four. That's four anime right there, and that's kind of it. There may be about three or four. Oh, not Robotech, but
Manzinger G,
no, not
Shogun
that,
Warriors.
not that. Where they made a big robot with the lions was the first one.
Voltron.
Voltron, and Sailor Moon, which I was never into. So, that's 7 or 8 anime that we had access to, and we laughed it up. I was a Battle of the Planets and Robotech specifically guy, Captain Harlock, and Star Blazers. Those were my part of my childhood. But now you've got so much, and it's such a very good time if that's the type of stuff. Thank you. That's the type of stuff that we have now that I really, really appreciate. Oh,
Brown
I forgot
Hornet.
I did like Brown Hornet.
So let's talk about the Brown Hornet. Superhero wise, on terms of black superheroes you saw on cartoons on television.
You had hold on.
Other than Vulcan, we had Black Vulcan.
Microman and the
something
girl
woman.
Yes. Hold on. I got to look this up now.
They had a very short-lived. It only lasted one season.
Yes.
But they had their own cartoon.
Yeah.
They really deserve more love because the concept of a black woman, black man, married couple, superhero team. Damn, I mean, I was going to say that was ahead of its time, but we don't even have that today. We don't even have that today. We're just talking about that. But yeah, I mean, C. Cole's talking about Cyborg on Super Friends. Cyborg wasn't on Super Friends. It was Black Vulcan was on Super Friends. Super Friends was before the Justice League. Cyborg wasn't a member of the Super Friends. He was a member of the Justice League, which was Super Friends was before Justice League. They had Black Vulcan because they had rights issues with Black Lightning, so they invented Black Vulcan.
What was that about?
The character. But moreover, two superheroes who I remember the most as a child, a young child, on television, Brown Hornet and Verb from Schoolhouse Rock. Let me tell you, every time those 2 minutes of superheroes, because they only got 2 minutes. I mean, the Brown Hornet segment of the Fat Albert show was a few minutes, maybe 5 at most. Verb was a 2-minute song on Schoolhouse Rock, but that was black superhero representation. That was seeing someone that looked like me with a cape and superpowers. I don't know what Brown Hornet's superpowers were, but he was a superhero, damn it.
Micro Woman and Super Stretch. That was their name.
Yes.
I just sent you their image if you want to pull it up. Micro Woman and Super
Stretch.
Yes,
Super Stretch and Micro Woman. Thank you, Priscilla's Dragon Balls and Louisiana Kid, who Super also Stretch mentioned them as well.
And then also you had something that I just recently discovered that was around at that time that I did not watch was the Space Sentinels. And the Space Sentinels were led by a black woman named Astra. It was 3 of them. Mercury, Hercules, and Astra.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. Space, and it's the whole series is on YouTube. And that's one of the things that we're talking about. These having black characters on Saturday morning cartoons. And back then in my day, cartoons lasted from 6 in the morning to 12 noon when wrestling came on. It was rare that you saw
or Kung Fu Theater.
It was rare that you saw a black cartoon character. And the Space Sentinels is one, and Micro Woman and Super Stretch was the other, as well as the Cosby Kids with the Brown Hornet. The Brown Hornet was basically Superman who skipped leg day. He was super strong, fast, all that other stuff. That was pretty much it. So
to this day, the one character is not much of a superhero per se, but a heroic in my mind at the time, 5 years old, mind you. The character who stands out in my mind the most, a black character that exerted hero status, dignity, and what have you, which really meant a lot to me. Mark, can you guess what I'm about to say?
Is it a cartoon?
No.
Live action?
Live action.
Battlestar Galactica?
Battlestar Galactica.
Boomer and Colonel Ty.
Boomer
Colonel Ty is still alive.
And Colonel Ty. They're both still alive.
Yeah. Well, Colonel Ty was older, but yes, Colonel Ty is still alive. Okay, for those who don't know, there was a show that came after Star Wars. There was a proliferation of
the next year
space-themed shows. Battlestar Galactica was an ABC series that lasted only one season, where basically you had a group of individuals who were attacked by some robots. Then they had to escape the robots, and that was the whole premise of the series.
Well, they were kind of robots that evolved from lizards.
Okay, sure. But at the end of the day, the robots that were called Cylons, and they were chasing the humans throughout space. The humans had, which were basically battleships in space. The second in command was a black man. He was a non-stereotypical military man. He had dignity, he had command, he had intelligence. That was Colonel Ty, one of the best pilots in the fleet. The stars were Apollo, who was the son of the commander, as well as his best friend Starbuck. One of their good friends was a dude by the name of Boomer.
Those guys were like the Three Musketeers.
Right. They were the three best fighters in the fleet. Back in the early 2000s, they remade Battlestar Galactica. Not only did they change the ethnicity of Boomer, who was somebody who I grew up loving, they changed his gender as well. They made Boomer an Asian female when the character was a black male. Colonel Ty went from a black male to a white male who ended up being, spoiler alert, a Cylon himself.
And a drunk.
Yeah, back when Paul and I were younger, Battlestar Galactica was a preeminent show because you did not have these black characters in stereotypical roles. Yep.
Yeah. And moreover, the premise of the show was humanity's origins prior to Earth. And they basically had like these 12 tribes of man, all equal tribes. But they had kind of their technology and style was very much based on Egyptian mythos. The pilots, the warriors, the soldiers, they call them warriors, their costumes had Egyptian themes.
Yeah.
The pilots basically had pharaoh helmets.
Yeah.
In 1978.
If you want to watch Battlestar Galactica, I love Battlestar Galactica. Not Battlestar Galactica 1980, but the original one season of Battlestar Galactica was phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
It starred Lorne Green, aka
guy from Bonanza.
Cartwright. Ben Cartwright. He was the star of the show. It's on Tubi or Freevee. The entire series is on Tubi or Freevee. One of those two free platforms if you want to watch it.
Battlestar Galactica was a big deal back in the day because
it really
Star Wars had just dropped. It was a major hit.
Yep.
it had changed sci-fi, television, movies, everything from that point forward. They literally stole some of the concepts from Star Wars, namely the little fighters and the big ships type thing, and put that in a television series. Just less than a year later, in 1978. Star Wars came out in 77, Battlestar came out in 78. So what they did to introduce it, they made a pilot, but they put the pilot in the theaters. So the very first time I saw Battlestar Galactica was actually in a movie theater. They made a 2-hour pilot, which was basically a movie.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And then they followed it up as an actual television show.
Yeah.
Based on that. It only lasted one season, but it was, I want to say it was a hit, but I guess it wasn't. I think the biggest problem was that the budget, because the budget was like,
because when you look at the show now, the production value of it was really, really high, especially for the 1970s.
They had to reuse footage.
Yeah, it was really, really good.
They really had to reuse. They literally reused
1977 Battlestar Galactica. Highly recommend. Or some of you may know as Faceman from the A-Team. That was my first introduction to him. Also starred. Well, no, that's the A-Team. Never mind. But yeah, it was.
Louisiana Kid says, down in Louisiana, it was from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. was cartoons. From 11 to 12 was Soul Train. And from 12 to 2 was Black Belt Theater. From 3 to 7:30 was Playtime. Saturdays back in the day were great.
And then, hold on. Then at 8 o'clock was Lawrence Welk. Then at 9 o'clock was Love Boat. Then at 10 o'clock was Fantasy Island, or some iteration or variation of that. So yes,
yeah, that time
Louisiana's in Central Time, and I was raised in Central Time, so that was pretty much it. Yeah. But for me,
absolutely.
But at 12, I think wrestling came on at 12. We didn't have kung fu stuff like that back then.
So I grew up in New York, so we had cartoons from, first in the morning. I don't remember what time that was. I assume 7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
It was 7 for you.
Yeah, probably 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until around noon, around that time. And then you'd have your Kung Fu Theater or your syndicated television. So your syndicated television would be like your Superman and your Batman. I'm talking the original 1960s Batman, the original 1950s Superman, syndicated shows would be around that time.
What was the nature show? What was the nature show where the dude would always send Jim out into the wild to fight the snakes and stuff? It was Mutual of Omaha's.
Oh, yeah, Mutual of Omaha.
Mutual of Omaha's. What was it called?
I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember.
Hold on, I gotta find it now.
The narration is what was the key. The narration of those episodes with the animals, and then we'd have Kung Fu Theater in the afternoon.
Sorry. Wild Kingdom.
So we have Kung Fu Theater in the afternoon. So you watch Kung Fu Theater, and then wrestling for us didn't come on until late night.
No, it was about noon for us.
Yeah, wrestling was a late night thing, because I remember my cousins and I would stay up late. When we would have sleepovers and stuff, we'd be up late watching wrestling. Superfly Stuka and Andre the Giant and
Junkyard Dog, the Iron Sheik,
Junkyard Dog, the Animal, George the Animal Steel.
Yep.
Let's see what other comments we have here. Someone talks about Mantis. Louisiana Kid says Mantis.
Yes,
with Carl Lumbly.
I think it lasted one season.
I think it was only one season.
Here's what's crazy. Let me just interject this. Mantis came out around 1989, 90, something like that. But you had several sci-fi shows that came on. You had that. What was what was the one that was like Tron, where it was a computer guy?
Automan.
Automan. You had Automan. You had what was
so let me talk about that for a second. So here's the thing.
Hold on. Desi Arnaz, sorry to interrupt. Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball's son,
Desi Jr.
Desi Jr. played an Automan, where it was a Tron-like television.
Let me explain because they really aren't getting what you're talking about. In a larger sense, the thing you have to remember is the year 1982. 1982 was one of the greatest years for sci-fi films of all time. You had E.T., you had Tron, you had, wasn't Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1982?
Automan was on 83 to 84. It was only one season.
So Tron was a big hit. Tron was a Disney film, and Tron was the very first movie to use CGI, or computer-generated images.
And that was in 82.
1982. They invented the technology to put it in that film. It looks cheesy by today's standards, but it was cutting edge at the time. Other people couldn't figure out how they did those effects. The idea of, God, it bothers me. I even have to explain this because I know there's some people that may not be familiar with the film, which blows my mind. But the idea is, long story short, people get sucked into a computer, into the internet, what was called the grid back in the day. They didn't even call it the internet back in the day. They just called it the grid. These characters get sucked. This one character gets sucked into, a computer programmer gets sucked into the internet, or the predecessor of the internet, I guess at the time, to fight against other programs for control of the internet. To say that this movie was ahead of its time it doesn't really do it this service. The concept of the film of having a person digitized and made into a computer program to fight on the internet against other computer programs, most people didn't even get the concept back then. If you explain that story today, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. We have the internet. I visualize what the internet's like all the time. But Tron was the very first. It was ahead of its time. Disney now released a Tron ride at Disney World and Disneyland, light cycle ride. And they did a reboot with the characters back at, 10 years ago? Right, Mark?
That movie sucked. God, that movie was bad.
I don't think the movie sucked. I disagree. I don't think the movie
that's
sucked.
Fine. That movie was bad.
I don't think it was that bad.
Yeah, okay.
The special effects were brilliant.
Of course. I mean, it's modern times, but the movie itself, the story,
I didn't think it was that bad. I enjoyed it.
Basically, it was Tron Legacy in 2010. Jeff Bridges was in it again, as well as Garrett Hedlund, who made his debut in Troy as Brad Pitt's nephew in the Troy series.
Actually, I think his debut was in Friday Night Lights.
Let's see here.
I think that's the first time I recall seeing. I remember him in Troy, but I think Friday Night Lights preceded that.
Let's see. He may have, but that movie was bad. I saw it in the theater, did not like it, not one bit. But that was a type of stuff.
Oh, we were talking about Automan. So they took those same concept of those special effects, which was blowing people's minds in 1982, and a year later did a television series where instead of a man going into the internet, they brought an internet program into the real world. Yep. So this program could create, a body for himself that was all electronic or whatever. He could manifest a car. That was the big thing. He made his car that was like super futuristic and glowed. Yeah. And that was called Automan.
Yeah. I remember enjoying it, but I was a kid and didn't know any better. So, but no, Troy was his first Headlands. Troy was his first introduction, his first thing ever. But Friday Night Lights came out that same year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Troy was
C. Cole
first.
says we had cartoons from 6 to 12. However, a lot of NBC cartoons got cut in my area at 11. So I never got to see Kid and Play cartoon.
I didn't know they had a cartoon.
You don't remember they had a cartoon?
No.
I have the very first comic book they have.
I remember. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't remember, but I remember the Muhammad Ali cartoon.
PIXWRT, another New York person.
Okay. I remember the
Channel
Muhammad
11,
Ali
baby.
cartoon from the 70s.
What cartoon?
The Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali had a cartoon back in the 70s.
I vaguely remember that.
No, that was, yeah. Do you remember the popcorn machine with the Harlem Globetrotters?
Yes.
And Rodney Allen Ripney. I used to want to be Rodney Allen Ripney. If you're listening to this right now and you have access to your computer and want to open up another tab, Google Rodney Allen Ripney. Rodney Allen Ripney was basically the child star of the 70s before Gary Coleman. Good looking black kid, big eyes, big fro. He was like in a Burger King commercial. And he had a show that was kind of like a variety show called The Popcorn Machine that starred the Harlem Globetrotters, and he was in it. It was very cool. That's part of
John Hill said, I love Junkyard Dog and Sergeant Slaughter.
Of course, yeah.
Our
And
wrestling.
they had a WWE or whatever cartoon for a minute there too.
Yeah, they did.
Sergeant Slaughter was in G.I. Joe. So
G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Chillmonger's in the building. Roddy Piper, Nikolai Volkov, Macho Man.
Macho Man, Randy Savage, Ted DiBiase.
Superfly Stuka, man. Superfly Stuka was my dude.
Hold on. So Roddy Piper was in, what was that show? Them?
They Live?
Was it They Live? Yo, that movie with David, oh God, what's my man's name? David Keith or Keith David? I always get those two confused.
Keith David is the black man with the dark voice, the deep voice.
Yes, it was They Live that came out in '88. That movie is phenomenal. But Jesse the Body Ventura, Manimal was
Manimal. Wow.
It took that dude like 30 minutes to change into an animal. Yeah, I remember Manimal.
He was Animal Man before Animal Man.
Yep.
Oh, yo, check this out. Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. My God. So here's the thing with Captain Power. This was at the advent of video games, right? Cutting edge.
Was this a cartoon or a show?
It was. That's a very good question. It was a live action show, but they merchandised it with a toy. So in the toy was like a gun or something like that, I believe, and you'd have these action sequences where you could use your toy pointed at the screen, and like you could shoot characters with your gun or something like that on the screen in this live action television show. It was called Captain Power and the Soldiers of Fortune. It was a sci-fi show, live action show. God, my childhood was so cool.
What about, do you remember the Powers of Matthew Starr?
Yes, the alien boy.
Yes.
The Powers of Matthew Starr.
Yep.
I always looked at him and said, man, that kid could use a haircut.
Shazam and Isis. And Isis just died in the past 2 years.
She died?
Yeah, she died about 2 years ago. Yep.
I didn't know that.
And as a matter of fact, I don't know if anybody has seen the most recent Shazam movie, but the guy who played the original Billy Batson in the 1970s version of Shazam was in the Shazam movie as a cameo.
Yeah, I saw that. Super Force, Super Cop. Anybody remember that show?
Nope, you just made that up, Damon.
Dr. Van Hoot's Comics from the Spiral Dimension. In the UK, we had wrestling every Saturday at 3 p.m. for 20 years from the 70s to 80s. Then it was canceled. We got WCW sometimes in the afternoon. Then they switched that to the middle of the night.
Okay, so this is basically a comic book space. One of the things that I like about reading back issues of comic books, are the advertisements for shows that were on at that time. You know what I'm saying? And it takes me back to my childhood. You know, I'm sitting up here reading, a Thor comic book as an example from 1982, and then they'll have a splash page for an advertisement for the CBS lineup for the Tarzan Lone Ranger hour or whatever. It was, yeah.
Dr. Van Hoot says it was real hard to watch wrestling unless you had cable. Well, my British friend, I will tell you this.
Not here in the States.
You at least had carry-ons, bloke. So enjoy. We do not have that here in the States.
Do that. Stop. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Sean says, "Oh, Tron Legacy was a sequel to the original film. I geeked out so much every time the Tron character was on the screen in that movie."
Yep. I don't know that I've ever seen the original Tron movie in its entirety.
What?
Yeah, I don't know that I have. I'm not saying I haven't. I just don't recall that I have. But yeah,
get off this live right now and go watch that movie.
That
movie's a classic.
MC Hammer, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. Those are the ones that are, real people who I can recall that had their own cartoons. But I don't remember the Kid and Play cartoon.
I have a question for you. Do you remember? Hold on. Hold that thought. I'll be right back.
So while he's doing that, let me suggest and encourage you to do so now. Also, if you are on social media, specifically on Twitter, let me ask, encourage, and suggest that you follow Black Comic Lords on Twitter, as well as myself, ATL BLERD. Those are my accounts on Twitter. And I talk a lot about comic books, talk a lot about movies, sci-fi stuff, things of that nature. So if you follow Black Comic Lords, it helps the channel, perhaps monetize itself so that it can continue to bring you good content. So
I was cleaning out old boxes at my mother's house a couple of years ago and came across old stuff of mine from when I was a kid, because God bless them, my parents never threw away any of my old stuff. So there was a lot of ties between the television that I watched as a child and the books that I would collect, toys I'd buy. And one of the classic ways to tell what was important to a child at the time was the series of books called the Little Golden Books.
Oh, yeah. Somebody just mentioned that on Twitter. Hey, get rid of this picture of Sam Jackson and make your...
Oh, yeah, sorry. The Little Golden Books.
Yeah.
So this was my little golden book for Shazam, which was tied into my watching of the Shazam and ISIS Power Hour.
Yep.
Right?
Have you gone on eBay to see what the pricing on that is?
I have no idea. I also had, because I was a kid, so I wrote on this stuff too. I probably wrote my name on it. I also had another cartoon that I absolutely loved from a series of productions by a group called Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, come on. Hanna-Barbera was ubiquitous.
Johnny Quest.
Here's a little tidbit for people who may not know. Okay, back in the 60s, there was the Johnny Quest cartoon. Okay. Johnny Quest lived with his father's friend, Race Bannon, as well as a boy that they adopted by the name of Haji.
Was he a slave or was he?
He was their
ward. I think the term they used back in the day was ward.
Right. The original voice actor for Johnny Quest was Tim Matheson. Tim Matheson was the original voice of Johnny Quest, a.k.a. Eric Stratton from Animal House, a.k.a. he played vice president. I can't remember his whole name, but he was the vice president in The West Wing. So Tim Matheson's acting career goes back to the 1960s.
You could not tell that this book belonged to anyone else, this Johnny Quest book. You know why? Because
name all on it.
At every page, at the beginning of every one of these books, they had a space for you to write your name. And that's little 5-year-old Paul White Davis writing his name to let you know that this was his book.
Who was the manufacturer? What does it say? Little Golden Book?
This one was it says Modern Promotions.
No, but it was a Little Golden Books book.
The one before it was little Golden Book. This was an authorized edition from, I guess, the cartoon or whatever. But here's another one. This is another one that'll blow your mind. This one, and I know I've got more of these. I just can't find them at this moment. Do you remember this one?
Oh, come on. The Devlins? The Devlins and the Clue Club. Those were my shows. So basically, the Devlins were a family of daredevils.
Stunt people.
Stunt people, daredevils who went around to circuses and fairs performing motorcycle stunts. And on the side, they would solve crimes. And, they had the same voice actors, same animation as like the Clue Club that I absolutely loved. Yes, I remember the Devlins. And that's the type of stuff that you can find on YouTube.
Unfortunately, the cover has separated from this.
Yeah. Now, let me say this. Back in the 70s, there was a guy by the name of Evel Knievel. Evel Knievel was a stuntman from, I want to say, Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. But he was like a rock star. He would get a motorcycle and just basically jump over stuff and hold on for dear life, hoping he would not fall. So they made, because this Devlin, hold that back up. The page that you just had. The uniform that Paul just showed of this character, who was the oldest Devlin brother, who did the motorcycle tricks, his uniform was basically kind of like what Evel Knievel's looked like without the stars and stripes.
Right.
Evel Knievel, I had an Evel Knievel doll. I had the motorcycle, and I had that little red thing.
Don't even get me started on Team America.
That you would ramp up so he could go and do stunts or whatever. But Evel Knievel was basically like a rock star. You know what I'm saying? He was a stuntman who received mad fame, mad press back in the 70s. He actually had a movie. There were at least 2 movies about him that came out. Yeah.
And this is the final book that I had. Oh, wow. I actually cut out the back. This is bad. Stuff you did as a kid. Do you remember this?
Hong Kong Phooey, Scatman Crothers, of course.
Hong Kong Phooey.
That song, yep.
So here was the debate Herschel and I had. Is Hong Kong Phooey black?
Yeah, because he was voiced by Scatman Crothers. So yeah.
See, you see how you automatically answered yeah?
Yeah.
I said the same thing, and he was like, no, he's a dog. I was like,
he was a dog, but he was a black dog.
He was
Even though he wasn't drawn black, but he was a black dog.
Anamorphication, something like that. Anamorphication.
He was an anamorphic dog who had kung fu powers, who was voiced by the late great Scatman Crothers. If you saw,
he was blacker than black. You cannot tell me Hong Kong Phooey was not black. I know he's a dog, but he was black.
Yep.
Every black child who watched Hong Kong Phooey back in the 1970s knew this was a black superhero. I kid you not.
Yes, indeed. When was that on? Hong Kong Phooey was on from 1974 to 1975.
Dude, that was from when I was 2 until 4, whatever.
But yeah, he was voiced by Hong Kong Phooey. Hanna-Barbera in the 70s and 80s had animation on lock. They made some classic classic cartoons back in the day. Yeah.
Oh
Well,
man,
look,
I'm
dude,
missing
we've
out
been
on
on
these
here
people
for
are
about
making. People are piling in. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry I didn't get to your comments. Let me just throw in some of these comments here.
Yeah, real quick.
Anyone remember
Of
Land of the
course.
Lost? Of course.
Holly was my first crush. Holly was my first crush with those maroon corduroys that she used to wear.
Wow.
And them blonde pigtails. Yes.
With
Absolutely.
the pigtails?
Holly was my, it was either
And
Holly
then C. Cole
or
says
Cindy from the Brady Bunch. One of those two was my first crush. Yep.
C. Cole says, which version of Land of the Lost, the 70s or the 90s versions? Bite your tongue.
70s, of course. Well,
There's
I
only
know
one
there was
version
a
of
90s
Land of the
version,
Lost.
but the 70s with the sleeve stacks.
Even if there
and
was, I
Chaka.
wouldn't watch it.
Who else?
Hey, look. Dr. Van Hoot got my reference about the carry-ons. You gotta be British to get that. Louisiana kid, I agree with Paul. Our childhoods were great. Our childhoods were awesome. We didn't need babysitters. We had television.
If you're older and came up in the 70s and 80s, we had some good stuff back then. We really did. And it was unique because
all you needed as a child.
All of us watched the same things because there wasn't much out there. We had ABC, CBS, NBC. That was it. So, if you came up during that era, all of us watched Dukes of Hazzards. All of us watched Falcon Crest. And we watched The Love Boat because that's all there was. Now there's so much out there. You have options. Everybody isn't necessarily watching the same things unless it becomes part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Right, because there's so many choices now.
Think
about it. You and I lived in two completely different parts of the country.
But we watched the same
stuff that we watched is virtually identical.
Yep.
Because that's all there was.
Yep. There are certain things that transcend geography and everything that's out there. It cuts through the noise. As an example, Game of Thrones, when it dropped like 12, 13 years ago, everybody was watching Game of Thrones. There are very few shows nowadays that cut across all of that. You've got shows like Snowfall that everybody's watching nowadays, or BMF and things of that.
It was Hanna-Barbera. Dr. Van Hoot's asking about Devlin. If it was Hanna-Barbera or Filmation.
Filmation was in the past 20 years, but Hanna-Barbera goes back to the 70s.
It says it at the top there too. Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah. If you want to see that type of stuff, just go on YouTube. Put in Devlin. Also put in Clue Club. They're basically the same thing. And Jabberjaws.
Just put in Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Put in Hanna-Barbera cartoons on YouTube. You'll be exposed.
There was a formula where you would have about 4 or 5 individuals, most of them human. You may have an anamorphic shark or dog or car or something, because you had Speed Buggy. And basically, it was all like Scooby-Doo, where you had a group of 4 or 5 people along with this anamorphic thing.
Dragon Ball's going to have me singing a song the rest of the night. Hong Kong Phooey, #1 super guy. Quicker than a human. Oh, God, I'm going to be singing it all night now. I can't get that song out of my head.
What else?
Hong Kong Phooey was one of my favorites.
It was one of our favorites.
Just like...
of course.
Losing Kid. Just like we all know Panthro from the Thundercats was black.
Do you know who voiced Panthro? The voice of Panthro was the dude who played Bill Cosby's father on The Cosby Show. He voiced Panthro. So, yes, he was black.
Sean agrees that Hong Kong Phooey was indeed black.
Yes.
Other characters who also noteworthy: Jazz of Transformers, Destro. You know what's interesting about Destro is that Destro as a character is actually Scottish.
Yes, right. Yes. Destro was never black. Sorry, Cole. Destro was not black. He was Scottish.
The voice actor who did Destro was black, but the character himself was actually supposed to be Scottish.
Right.
What's interesting though is when I think it was IDW, one of the comic book companies, independent comic book companies that took over the G.I. Joe comic book license. It was Devil's Due. Sorry, it was Devil's Due, not IDW. Devil's Due had it before IDW. Devil's Due, when they did their iteration of Destro ultimately had children with the black woman. So he had like 2 or 3 black children, which was kind of cool.
I can see that.
They also had Devastator, Turbo from the GoBots. GoBots.
You remember?
Wow,
remember
that was the great value version of the Transformers.
Exactly.
If you were poor and couldn't afford Transformers, you had GoBots. What?
You remember the show Cops, and the leader of the Cops was a black dude with a big
COPS, yes, with the high top fro and the all voiced by black guys, Scatman and Arthur Burgott.
Don't know.
Gordon says, "I heard Evel Knievel broke every bone in his body."
Yes. Go on YouTube and put in Evel Knievel. That dude was just like, it was crazy. Captain Caveman was another one of my favorites. He was great. Wasn't black, but yes, Captain Caveman. There are Scottish black dudes.
Dr. Van Hoot says there are Scottish black dudes. I know.
Destro, I would never have said that Destro was black.
Technically speaking, I'm Scottish too.
Hey, can you pull up that Evel Knievel toy so folks can see what we're talking about?
The Evel Knievel toy?
Yes, with the motorcycle and the ramp thing
on YouTube or something.
No, just an image of it.
All right, hold on.
Because this was like, I grew up poor. You know what I'm saying? I was raised by a single mom, didn't have hardly any money, but she made a way. And I was fortunate enough that she got me that Evel Knievel motorcycle with Evel Knievel on it, and that thing that you would attach him to, you turn the crank, and then he would go off and then jump, and then you put it back on. It was very, very simple, but it was cool. And that toy now on YouTube, I didn't mean that, on eBay goes for like $60-$70, if not more. Let's see. Pull it up.
So check this out.
Yes. Mine was red. The main one was red. Yes. So if you right now go on eBay, you will find the Evel Knievel stunt cycle for anywhere from $50 to $250. Yep. That was our childhood. Yep.
He said the actor Arthur also voiced Iceberg on G.I. Joe.
I have no idea who Iceberg was.
You don't remember Iceberg?
No.
He was like one of the few snow G.I. Joe, along with
Alpine.
Alpine was the mountain guy. The other snow guy was it's not Snowball. What was his name? Jeez, with the red beard.
No idea.
I was big into G.I. Joe back in the day.
Yeah, no.
And Stalker was my dude.
Don't know who that is.
You don't know who Stalker was from G.I. Joe?
No, I wasn't.
He was the first black G.I. Joe.
Wasn't huge into G.I. Joe.
Oh my god.
Not at all.
Little known history: GoBots came out before Transformers.
Really? Well, Transformers took over.
Nobody remembers GoBots after Transformers came out. Mighty Orbots. Lothar and his son were voiced by Buster Jones, who also did Black Vulcan and Blaster of Transformers. Huh. Funny that they are often thought of as the knockoff. Go Mighty Orbots. Come on, guys.
Remember that.
$6 Million Man.
I had that doll.
Look.
That doll goes for about like $80 now, if not more. Hold on, let me look.
I still have my Colonel Steve Austin action figure. I don't know where his outfit is. his red tracksuit,
Yep.
and
And
his
then
rubber sneakers.
you could look through his one eye, his
You could
bionic
look
eye.
through the back of his head
Yep.
and look through his eye, his telescopic eye.
Yep.
He had a button in his back which would allow him to lift up his arm. And they had a toy car engine that you could attach to the arm and have him have action where he's lifting it to show how strong he was.
That toy on eBay goes plus. And I may have to get it.
I was the hugest $6 Million Man fan back in the day. He was a superhero. You can't tell me different. Lothar is from Defenders of the Earth cartoon. Yeah. And actually the very first black superhero. Lothar. Snow Job. Thank you, C. Cole. Snow Job. I knew it was Snow something. That was the name of the first Arctic G.I. Joe member. Stalker and Roadblock had different voices. Only Jackie Chan has broken more bones and lives to talk about it.
Yeah, because
I'm
gonna tell you, go on YouTube and put in Evel Knievel, because that dude, like, I heard something where he didn't really, his machine was his stock machine. It didn't have like the struts and stuff that you would expect a machine to have, and he would just go and hang on for dear life. Like, yeah, but he was a
everybody's talking about all the black G.I. Joes. There's a lot of black G.I. Joes. G.I. Joe does not get enough props for having black characters. Oh, Gordon said he had 2 of the Steve Austin Dobbs and the Sasquatch as well.
Well,
you must have been
Gordon's
rich.
Family was rich, so
you were rich, bro. If you could afford 2 Steve Austin dolls and a Sasquatch,
I had G.I. Joe. I didn't mean that. I had Steve Austin. That's all I had.
That's all I had too. I had the Steve Austin. I couldn't afford the Steve Austin with the space suit. Remember that one?
Yes, I had Steve Austin and I had Evel Knievel, and I want to say I had like a Green Arrow doll as well, but that was action figure. I'm sorry.
Now, when you're talking Mego figures, look.
Yeah, that's what I had. Yep.
I had the Mego action figures were the best. I had Captain America, Spider-Man, Batman.
Yeah, I didn't have all that.
I had Captain Kirk. I had most of the Star Trek people. I had Captain Kirk, I had Spock, I had Lieutenant Uhura, and was it Dr. McCoy? I don't think I had Scotty. I think I had Dr. McCoy.
I think I had Aquaman, if I'm not mistaken.
I had Aquaman. I had Aquaman as well.
Yeah.
The University of Miami's official superhero.
Paul says that because back in the 2000s, there was a show called Smallville. And
Louisiana says, do we have G.I. Joe with a Kung Fu grip? That actually is too old for me. Maybe Marc had one, but I had the 1982 G.I. Joes, not the original ones from the 60s.
Okay, yeah, I had the Aquaman. That's what I had. I'm looking at a picture now. That's what I had. Yeah.
Chillmargan says, I didn't know about this other Steve Austin.
Right. And that's what threw me back in the 90s when
it was very confusing.
Steve Austin came out. I was really, really confused for a period of time because he took the quote unquote original Steve Austin's name. Yep.
Damon points out the Arctic team that I was trying to remember: Snow Job, Avalanche, and Iceberg. That was the Arctic team. If you are a G.I. Joe fan, you know that G.I. Joe has different groups of specialists, right? There was an Arctic team. There's an underwater team that had consist of Torpedo and Deep Six, right? You had your ninja team with Snake Eyes and Jinx, and I guess Scarlet was kind of included with that. And Quick Kick was the martial arts guy. He kind of got sort of some in that until he died. You had the Rangers. You had Stalker, Beachhead, and there was another Ranger guy whose name I can't remember. There's a Desert Team. G.I. Joe was the shit, man. I love me some G.I. Joe.
Don't cuss.
Yeah, sorry. Get carried away. People asking about He-Man. Clamp Champ from He-Man.
The black dude. Yeah.
I had Spock. Fun chat, guys. I got to go to sleep. It's 5:10 in the morning here.
Yeah, I
you
got
for
to get
being
sleep
here.
too because I got an
We've been
early.
on for 3 hours. We had so much fun. We were on for 3 hours. Thank you all for hanging out with us for 3 whole hours, just us chatting it up, drinking whiskey, and just talking mess, man, and just having a good time. So really
We'll see you
appreciate
next
each
time.
and every one of you, and we'll see you next time. Mark, I'm out, man.
Yep.
Peace.
All right. Peace.